I'd like to thank all the commissioners for joining us today. Before I start the meeting, can I just ask the commissioners who are on to please turn on their cameras? Good afternoon and welcome to the October 11th, 2022 regular meeting of the Community Development Commission of Chicago. I am Gwendolyn Hatton Butler, Chairwoman of the CDC and host of today's virtual meeting. I will now call to order the October 11th meeting of the Community Development Commission with a call of the roll. On September 16th, 2022, Governor Pritzker renewed his executive order proclaiming that all counties in the state of Illinois as a disaster area. Section 7 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act allows the CDC, along with other city boards and commissions, to host virtual meetings during this COVID-19 public health emergency, provided that certain conditions are met. One of those conditions is that the chair of this commission determines that an in-person meeting on the scheduled meeting date would not be practical or prudent. To ensure that today's virtual meeting meets all conditions of the Open Meetings Act, I am hereby making the determination pursuant to Section 7E2 of the Act that due to the COVID-19 public health emergency, an in-person meeting would not have been practical or prudent today. Therefore, in accordance with the Commission's emergency rules, this meeting is being held virtually on Zoom and can be viewed live via the Commission's website. A court reporter is present today to record the proceedings. Commissioners, you have all been designated as panelists, which allows you to control your microphone. Please remember to place your microphone on mute unless you wish to speak. If you would like to be recognized by the chair, please activate the raise your hand feature and you will be called in order. The agenda for today's meeting was posted on October 7th, both online at the CDC's website and physically in City Hall. Before I begin with the call of the roll, I'd like to thank all of the members of the public who have joined us today. I see the number is growing, and we certainly appreciate you taking time out to share your views with us today during the public meetings component of today's meeting. I see that several participants have raised their hand. I would ask that if you have questions at this point in the meeting, if you could just place your questions or comments in the comments section, you will be allowed to speak at the appropriate time on the matters that are of concern to you. I will now begin the meeting with a call of the roll. Commissioners, when your name is called, please turn your microphone on, respond by saying present, and please also indicate that you can hear me okay. Vice Chair Newsom. Secretary Wheat.
Present, and I can hear you.
Commissioner Buford.
Present, and I can hear you.
Commissioner Cepeda. Commissioner Chan McKibben. Commissioner Cox. Commissioner Curtis.
Present, and I can hear you.
Commissioner Davis.
Present, and I can hear you.
Commissioner Gomez. Commissioner Griggs. Commissioner Thomas,
Present, and I can hear you.
Commissioner Trevino,
Present, and I can hear you.
Chairwoman Butler is present. We have a quorum. The first item on our agenda, request approval of the minutes from our previous meeting held on September 13th, 2022. The commissioners have had an opportunity to review the minutes, and if there are no corrections, I am looking for a motion to approve. Do I have a motion?
So move, Commissioner
Moved by
Thomas.
Commissioner Thomas. Do I have a second?
Second by Trevino.
Thank you. Seconded by Commissioner Trevino. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act, all votes are to be conducted by roll call so that each member's vote on each issue can be identified and recorded. Commissioners, if you were not in attendance during the September 13th meeting, please abstain from this vote. Vice Chair Newsom. Secretary Wheat.
Yes.
Commissioner Buford.
Yes.
Commissioner Cepeda. Commissioner Chan McKibben. Commissioner Cox. Commissioner Curtis.
Yes.
Commissioner Davis.
Yes.
Commissioner Gomez. Commissioner Griggs. Commissioner Thomas.
Yes.
Commissioner Trevino.
Yes.
Chairwoman Butler votes yes, the motion passes. The public was given an opportunity to provide written comments up to 24 hours prior to the start of this meeting through the CDC email address, which is cdc@cityofchicago.org. There were 3 written statements submitted for old business agenda item A, Kinsey Industrial Conservation Area TIF Amendment number 2, and 2 written comments for old business agenda item C, Red Line Extension TIF designation. I will now read those items into the public record during their respective public hearings. Commissioners, before we go further into our regular meeting agenda, our first item of old business requires us to recess from our regular CDC meeting in order to hold a required public hearing on the amendment of an existing TIF plan. Specifically, the Department of Planning and Development will be requesting approval of the redevelopment plan for the proposed Kinsey Industrial Conservation Area TIF redevelopment project area amendment number 2. And to that end, we'll be accepting public comments. So we will now recess from the regular meeting of the Community Development Commission in order to hold a public hearing on the matter of the proposed Kinsey Industrial Conservation Area TIF redevelopment project area amendment number 2, and to recommend or oppose adoption of amendment number 2 for the area. Now that we are in the public hearing, Ryan Slattery will present the staff report on behalf of the Department of Planning and Development. Ryan, you may begin your presentation.
Just clarify, you guys can see the opening screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. For record, my name is Ryan Slattery, and I'm a project manager with the Department of Planning and Development for the City of Chicago. I'm here today with my colleague, Tim Jeffries, as well as our TIF consultant, Ann Maroney from Johnson Research Group. We're here today to discuss the proposed extension of the existing Kinsey Industrial Conservation Area TIF district for an additional 12 years to ensure an ongoing financial resource in order to improve the aging infrastructure throughout the entire district, support economic development, including industrial uses west of Ogden Avenue, and ensure that 30% or more of residential uses are affordable in the Fulton Market Innovation District, or FMID. As part of the extension process, we're proposing to amend the termination date, revise the budget, update the land use plan, and make minor changes to the plan language. The Kinsey Industrial Conservation Area TIF district is generally bounded by Grand Avenue to the north, Kedzie Avenue to the west, Washington Boulevard to the south, and the Kennedy Expressway to the east. As you can see in the map, there are multiple overlay districts within the area, including the FMID, the PMD4, the Kinsey Industrial Corridor, the Kinsey Overlay District, and the Fulton Randolph Market Landmark District. The Kinsey Industrial Conservation Area TIF District was designated on June 10th, 1998, and absent to this extension was set to expire on December 31st of this year. In November of 2021, the city received state authority to extend the life of the TIF district for an additional 12 years to allow for continued redevelopment within the area. This extension really builds on many of the planning studies that have been completed in recent years. An extension has either been directly contemplated in the documents or identified work that could be supported should the Kinsey TIF be extended. The first of these is the Kinsey Industrial Corridor Framework Plan that was adopted in May of 2019 that made reference to the Kinsey TIF district as a financial incentive that could be used within the area. The Kinsey Industrial Corridor Infrastructure Study that was published in August of 2020 included multiple short and long-term infrastructure projects, including at-grade metro crossing improvements, viaduct improvements, transportation improvements, water usage needs, and the electricity improvements that are all within the TIF district and could use TIF as a resource. The 2021 update to the Fulton Market Innovation District includes multiple projects that could use Kinsey as a financial resource, and specifically says they would need to be extended for those projects to use the TIF funds. Beyond the Affordable Requirement Ordinance, or ARO, that was approved by the City Council in April of 2021, the city is also committed to providing a menu of options for support and incentives to bring affordable dwelling units in the FMID area to create a mixed income community that exceeds the goals of ARO with a target of 30% affordable units within the FMID area. This is the same target the city has put on the LaSalle Street RFP that was released last month, targeting 30% affordable units. The Connected Communities Ordinance was approved by the City Council in July of 2022, which creates and connects to jobs and encourages homes and businesses near transit by expanding the existing TOD incentives more equitably across the city. It also improves the safety of our streets and sidewalks near transit for Chicagoans while they walk and bike. Also, as part of the amendment, DPD is updating the general land use plan for the TIF districts, which reflects the current zoning. This land use map aligns with the Kinsey Industrial Corridor Framework Plan that was approved by the Chicago Plan Commission in May of 2019, as well as subsequent revisions to the zoning code. The goals and objectives of the Kinsey include modernizing, enhancing aging infrastructure throughout the entire TIF, supporting an ongoing economic development, including industrial users west of Ogden Avenue, and encouraging 30% affordable housing within the FMID area. In order to advance these goals, the city has approved TIF funding for the following projects in the TIF districts. The Hatchery at 3100 West Lake Street received $7.2 million in TIF in order to create 67,000 square foot food entrepreneur incubator. The Small Business Improvement Fund, or SPIF, has been used 154 times within the TIF district that's allocated almost $10 million of TIF funds. The Morgan Street Green Line Station was funded by the Kinsey TIF using $30 million of TIF funds. Grand Avenue improvements from Racine to Chicago Avenue have allocated $25.8 million, and Lake Street improvements from Halsted to Chicago Avenue have allocated $24 million. The Nelson Mandela Apartments, located in both Kinsey and Chicago Central Park TIF districts, includes the construction of 72 units of affordable rental housing over 8 sites. The project received $6.7 million in TIF assistance. And finally, $500,000 of the TIF funds have been allocated for Morin Elementary, and $400,000 of TIF funds have been allocated to Beeler Elementary turf field. The amended budget reflects the additional increment that will result in adding 12 years to the TIF district. Please note that the line item for each categories are for planning purposes. The only amount that can't change without council approval is total redevelopment project costs. We anticipate that the future TIF funded projects in the area to include both pending and potential projects in the extension if it's approved. For the pending projects that are currently moving, we have the CTA Damon Station and track improvements, the Otis and Cather Elementary School improvements, Metro Viaduct improvements, the Covenant House, and additional SPIF, which had an allocation introduced at the City Council in September. The potential future projects include additional transit enhancements to the Green Line and Metro, public infrastructure improvements defined in the Kinsey Industrial Corridor Infrastructure Study, and residential buildings with 30% or more affordable units in the FMID area. As with other planning studies, DPD has looked for input from different groups and has received support for the TIF amendment from the West Loop Community Organization, the West Central Association, the Industrial Council of Near West Side Chicago, or ICNC, the Metropolitan Planning Council, MPC, and Alderman Burnett. Thank you for your time, and we're happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ryan, for your presentation. Kamal, can you tell me if Alderman Walter Burnett or someone from his office is on the call today? Tech support, if you're responding, you're on mute. Bob McKenna, can you see if Alderman Burnett is on? I don't see him, but I want to give him an opportunity to make any comments if he's available.
I don't see him either.
Okay, that's fine. Then thank you. Thanks for that. I now have 3 written statements that were submitted on this matter, and I will read them into the public record now. This is the first statement. Kinsey Street, for which the district has been named, is a horrible street to drive or walk from Paulina to Hart Street and is in desperate need of new sewers and repaving. The street is full of very large potholes. The sewers are so old that the street floods in heavy rain, and nearby buildings are susceptible to taking in water when the street floods. In addition, Kinsey Street is full of weeds and trash, including old furniture. The Wood Street Viaduct is also a mess with huge potholes and trash everywhere. In heavy rain, the sewers back up along Kinsey Street from Wood to Paulina and on Hermitage Avenue from Kinsey to Hubbard. The sewers had some maintenance work done on them in the recent past, but it did not fix the issue. The existing lines need to be replaced with larger ones that can handle the amount of rainwater the area receives. Fixing the sewers in the Kinsey Hermitage area, repaving the street and sidewalks all along Kinsey from Paulina to Hart Street, and cleaning up the weeds and trash would absolutely help to achieve the overall goal of the TIF plan, quote, to remove the conditions that qualify the area as blighted and provide the mechanisms necessary to support public and private development and improvements in the area, end quote. Thank you for your consideration, Patty Payton. Patty Payton. This is the second statement. Dear Community Development Commission members, the Metropolitan Planning Council supports the extension of the Kinsey Industrial Corridor TIF for the express purpose of ensuring that 30% of all new residential units are reserved as affordable and on site. Housing affordability is a major challenge for many Chicago residents, and thus the council supports creating new affordable housing opportunities for populations that are historically left out of areas well served by transit and proximate to the loop. We encourage the city to ensure that new affordable units created support a mix of households, including families, aging households, and people with disabilities. Given the displacement pressures and affordability challenges in this TIF, an extension for the purpose of affordable housing development is appropriate. However, the council also expects more progress on distributing and porting development incentives into long disadvantaged and underinvested neighborhoods. Sincerely, Darlene Oliver Hightower, JD, President and CEO. The third statement. Members of the commission, we believe that the Kinsey Industrial Corridor area tax increment financing plan has been a tremendous net positive for the West Loop and Fulton Market and the 27th Ward overall. Providing a mechanism for economic, workforce, and infrastructure development is absolutely necessary for continued growth as we increasingly shift toward white-collar employment like information technology and business services, and away from manufacturing. We believe that the chief goals of the extension, which include improving aging infrastructure throughout the supporting economic development, including small business development, and industrial uses west of Ogden Avenue, and ensuring that 30% or more of residential uses in the Fulton Market Improvement District are worthy goals that should be pursued. Growth of the Kinsey Corridor has been crucial to funding infrastructure improvements that have directly and positively impacted the West Loop and Fulton Market and adjacent neighborhoods. Specifically, we cite the Morgan Street Green Line station improvements, infrastructure improvements along Lake Street improvements, and the Grand Avenue improvements, which are ongoing. These projects alone represent approximately $80 million in improvements, all funded by the Kinsey Corridor TIF. Safety in the area has become of greater concern as we attain more density of population. We welcome infrastructure projects that address pedestrian access and include ADA enhancements, enhance bicycle path development, improve the pedestrian experience, and upgrade our rapidly deteriorating viaducts. We believe these are elements that can help alleviate the growing issues of traffic safety and congestion. We also believe that the goal of workforce development and employment of local residents, as well as subsidized daycare in and around the redevelopment project area, is the right thing to do. It enhances the tax base of the city and opens the doors of opportunity to a larger number of our residents who have historically been overlooked. In the same vein, promoting mixed use and mixed income housing to achieve a minimum of 20% affordable with a goal of 30% north of Lake Street are goals worth pursuing, as they have the potential to create a 24-hour community. As for future developments, we look forward to the proposed TIF funded improvements, such as construction of the Damon Green Line station and other Green Line improvements, as well as improving aging infrastructure throughout the district. These past successes and future successes will depend in large part on our ability to ensure effective coordination between public and private entities. We are hopeful that the extension of the Kinsey Corridor TIF will continue to make the West Loop and Fulton Market an even more vibrant dining, arts district, and cultural center in the city, and spread economic prosperity to areas to the west. We are pleased to support Kinsey Industrial Conservation Area TIF redevelopment project, Area Amendment 2, respectfully, Executive Committee and Board of Directors, West Loop Community Organization. That was the last written statement that was submitted. Members of the public will have an opportunity to make comments following any questions that the CDC commissioners may have to the department staff. Commissioners, besides city staff, Ann Maroney from Johnson Research Group is the TIF consultant for this item and is here to help the department answer your questions. Commissioners, do you have any questions for DPD or the TIF consultant? And I will ask the commissioners to please use your hands if you have questions. Use the raise your hand function, sorry. Commissioner Weed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A question for staff or the consultant. Kind of going back to the public comments. I know, Ryan, you touched on some of the affordable housing and infrastructure plans. Maybe provide more detail, kind of addressing some of the concerns that some of the public comments had.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
So I mean, there were comments specifically with respect to affordable housing plans in the area and how that aligns with other affordable housing goals the city has established either via ordinance or via plan, and also infrastructure investments, particularly on the west side of the district, closer to Kinsey.
So the arrow currently has the requirement of 20% or greater. We're looking to increase that. We've done it in other areas as well, to 30% if there is TIF funding involved within the project, 30% or greater within it. So an example, the LaSalle RFP that we just came out with has a same goal for it. For this area, it won't have a redevelopment of a current building. It will most likely be new construction. So only 50% of the affordable costs will be TIF eligible, based on it being new construction. But it is the goal for the department is to try to create a mixed income area of the Fulton Market Innovation Districts of the MID. For the infrastructure, yeah. So we actually, the one comment that we got, I don't know if Timmy want to answer this, or if, the first statement that we received, we have talked to CDOT, and they are actually in process of looking to redo the Kinsey Street in 2023. So construction's already in process, and should this TIF not get extended, we wouldn't be able to do that, since the TIF would expire at the end of this year, and we don't have it until 2023. There's additional a lot of infrastructure needs, especially at the northern end, that was identified in the infrastructure study. So hopefully with that, we would be able to, create complete streets within that area. That's the intention. That's the hope, that we would be able to do that.
Got it. Thank you. No other questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Secretary Weed. Do other members of the commission have questions? I don't see any hands raised. So I will now turn to questions or comments from the members of the public that have joined us. Since this is a public hearing under the Illinois TIF Act, the limits of number of individuals allowed to speak shall not apply. I will now call upon members of the public who have used the raise your hand feature to be recognized by the chair. Each person called upon the chair to speak will be limited to 3 minutes per agenda item. And I will call you.
Chair, can I just make a comment? I apologize.
Yes.
We did have one person that signed up previously through the CDC email address, Calvin Jin. So they were the first one.
They were the first one. Okay, well then we will let Calvin Jin have the floor. Calvin, thank you for joining us, and you have 3 minutes to make your comments.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Calvin Jin. I am a co-founder of a drone services company located in the TIF district, and I'm also a resident of the area. I'm a vice president on the board of ICNC. I have worked and lived in the TIF district since the early 1990s. I've witnessed and participated in many changes during that time. I am not hired to make these comments, but a resident and a business owner. My dad made things with his hands. I think modern manufacturing is so important for the future of our society. There's great honor in learning and perfecting your craft. Learning a skill helps individuals become an immediate value add to their communities. The amendment will continue to help create industrial uses, jobs, and infrastructure to bolster the West Side economy. We have witnessed recently what happens when there are global supply chain disruptions. In my opinion, building a larger industrial base in Chicago is a great idea. I think great cities are diverse not only in their population, but also in their makeup. Planning for affordable residential, commercial, office, retail, recreational, and industrial uses is something I have loved about Chicago, and this amendment is important to continue. We need to provide affordable building stock for industrial firms and support them with infrastructure, including transit needs. Chicago brands we have come to love and support, like Metric Coffee and Farmer's Fridge, may still have existed without the TIF district, but we do know they did utilize the benefits of it to start and build their companies. Thank you very much for the time today.
Thank you for your comments. I will now call on the Fulton Market Association. You may begin.
Hi, can you hear me? It's Roger Romanelli.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. I'm Roger Romanelli, Executive Director of Chicago's Fulton Market Association, and I thank you for this time. I'm participating today on behalf of many Chicago residents and businesses who couldn't be here at this time because they're working to pay their taxes for the government. Therefore, we're asking the CDC commissioners to table this issue today until at least 3 more nighttime hearings are held on this very serious and substantive issue of extending the most lucrative TIF in Chicago's history for the next 12 years. To date, there's been only 1 nighttime meeting for Chicago residents and taxpayers to understand the vast proposal, to understand how we can spend TIF money. And there absolutely must be more public hearings at night so that people can participate and understand in a reasonable timeline. Now, if the TIF is going to be extended, we're asking very simply for a written and detailed plan from the planning department. For example, the planning department has discussed the idea of bringing 30% affordable housing units to the Fulton Market area. All of us in Chicago want an affordable city, but does the planning department's proposal mean that significant developers will be able to access millions of dollars in TIF funds for large housing projects valued at hundreds of millions of dollars? We asked the planning department to explain this, but they haven't, and this is truly concerning. So there must be more time. Also, if the TIF is extended, let us be clear. Right now in our city, we're facing serious crime challenges. For the first time in the 23 years that I've worked in the market, we had a sidewalk cafe shot up with bullets a couple weekends ago. We had an area in the TIF on the west side also shot up a couple weeks ago. Therefore, we're asking right now for the mayor and the aldermen to agree to install 100 Chicago police security cameras in the Kinsey TIF to stop our crime crisis. Our overburdened police need every resource to fight smarter with limited resources. We also need cameras under all of the viaducts that have become serious havens for crime. Besides the cameras, 60% of TIF funds going forward must be used to strategically solve our city's root causes of crime. We're calling for written detailed goals before the TIF extension is approved, and we're asking that social service agencies, especially groups like Haymarket Center, are involved in the dialogue. We're calling for 50% cash rebates for small businesses and residents to put security cameras and lights on their buildings to stop crime. We're calling for a written agreement that the CTA Green Line station at Western Avenue will be built and the CTA Lake Street bus will be restored. CTA eliminated this bus, saying they were out of money in the past. But there's plenty of money both in the Kinsey TIF, federal, state infrastructure funds to restore this essential bus. I can't speak of it high enough, but we have to do this. Finally, the Lake Street Center columns
Thank you for your comments. At this point, we will move on to Stephen Hamilton.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You may begin. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. I've been in this area since 1989. I'm in between Ogden and Ashland, which is the exact area where we're talking about. I purchased in 1994 and consider myself one of the pioneers in the West Loop. I believe that we are caught in a very precarious position because we are in the middle of high taxes and limited use. So since I was able to go back to 2002, my taxes have increased 473% since 2002. And as a small business owner, it's becoming very difficult to stay in the area, which I think is a real shame because Chicago business owners make the fabric of Chicago and we're being forced out. Any one of us who have rental properties or rent part of our properties to help pay the mortgage and taxes, are in a position where very few people want to pay the rents that are demanded by the taxes. So, the other concern that I have as a business owner is I've been in this area so long, and as great as a TIF program is, I have not seen any of that in my community. So I have sidewalks that have not been changed in over 30 years. There are places in between this area that we're talking about that literally do not have sidewalks. So I am for the repeal, but if it's not repealed, I think this money needs to go back into this community for safety and infrastructure and tax relief. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Laura Girardi, you may begin.
Hi, I am actually a little bit concerned. On one slide, there was a line item that said relocation cost. This suggests to me that some current houses are going to be taken and people are going to have to relocate. Can someone speak to what area this refers to? I'm very concerned because my home, where I've lived for 62 years, is between Grand and Hubbard and is surrounded on three sides by factories. I'm near the metro station, I'm near the Metro Viaduct, and I really don't want to have my home taken. And so I'm just very concerned, and I'd just like to know what the relocation cost line item refers to. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. Sean Walker. Is Sean Walker still on?
Sean Walker, you have to unmute your microphone.
Okay, while we're waiting for Sean Walker, Irene Jakajova.
Yes.
Irina, sorry.
Irina Chaikova. Yes, thank you so much. So my name is Irina. I've lived for 25 years since 1997 on the corner of Hubbard and Levitt, and I represent my neighbors. I'm the treasurer of our condominium building, and I would just like to voice my concerns as well, most of which were already mentioned by other participants. One is that I have seen, we all have seen the Fulton Market flourish. It's a beautiful neighborhood now where tourists head and spend their money. Where I live, I have not seen in 25 years improvements, though I have seen the taxes go up. The first improvement that I'm noticing is going on for the last few months. Hubbard Street should be repaved. It was scraped a few weeks ago. Right now, we are living in the dust. There's no communication from the city. We don't know what is happening when the street will be paved. In the meantime, dust is heading, into our apartments through our windows. And Grand Avenue, the construction there started a year ago. For a year, we've been dealing with a lot of noise. People who are unable to use Grand Avenue cutting around our neighborhood. Contributing to pollution. Also, somebody else mentioned garbage, dirt everywhere in our neighborhood. We don't get enough of street cleaning services. So I just feel that there has been a neglect of some parts. The Kinsey area is being developed, but it's happening unevenly and unequally. Grand Avenue, Damon Green Line stop is being built, costing a lot of money. On the other hand, Western Green Line stop has not been even talked about. I believe people living in that area also deserve their Green Line stop. Same thing with the people who are using the Lake Street to get downtown. They deserve their bus service back. My other big concern is safety. In 25 years, I have not seen the neighborhood become safer. It's actually the opposite. While I live walking distance from Metric Coffee that somebody mentioned, I do not dare to walk there because for me, it means passing half a block south of my home through the Levitt Viaduct, and I don't feel safe enough to do that. And it's the safety also, and it's just extremely dirty. I feel like the viaducts have never been cleaned. And finally, I just like to say something that Mr. Romanelli mentioned. I wish there were more evening meetings. I'm an educator and had to reschedule my classes for this afternoon. So a more convenient time for these meetings in the future would be very welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. I see Sarah D.O.
Hello, thank you for your time, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. I definitely second the idea of, or second or third, the idea of having some of the meetings in the evening. I think that would be really helpful for not just me, but some of the other residents in our community. But thank you for your time. I'm a resident on the 2800 block of Fulton Street. And as some folks have mentioned, I think our beloved coffee place Metric is just on the other side, closer to Damon Street on Fulton. And me and a lot of our residents on the block and then farther west on Fulton Street love to be able to walk east on Fulton. But one of the areas that's particularly tough for us to navigate is on Fulton Street between Tallman and Western Avenue. So I think any work that we're doing for improvements, we would like to speak up on behalf of that area. So specifically Fulton Street under the viaduct between Tallman and Maplewood, but particularly the stretch of Fulton that takes you from about California to Western Street could use a good cleaning. There's lots of glass and dirt, a lot of trash and things that we're often going and just picking up on our own as a community. A lot of times we've seen that there's been a lot of improvement on Fulton Street east of Western, which is wonderful. But having that full stretch that sort of connects the residents that live west of Western and then the residents that, of course, are living closer to the Fulton Market District would be a huge improvement and really lend itself to connecting these areas that we all want to see, melt together as one community. So thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you. Sean Walker, I see your hand is, I see your name twice here.
Yes, I was trying to make sure I was able to be heard. So let me.
Yes, we can hear you. You may begin.
Okay, thank you for giving me an opportunity. I'm a resident of Garfield Park West. And one of my concerns is, as a former project manager for the city of Chicago, so I understand the process with the TIF, I'm very concerned about not having enough public input as far as having hearings. I'm a working class individual as well, and most of us are working during the day. So I think we need to extend an opportunity for many of us to be able to have a public hearing during the evening for many of the citizens. Also, with the public safety, I believe that our TIF can be used and should be used for, as we have known within our community now and throughout the city of Chicago, we are in a crisis. And I believe that utilizing some of those funds to support of cameras throughout the city is very important. If we can spend funds on red light cameras, I believe that it would be fundamentally responsible for us to use TIF dollars for cameras throughout the city, and especially in the Garfield Park and on the West Side area as well. Another concern I think is very important to utilize some funds is on Lake Street. I grew up over here, been over here. My family has been over here since '68, and we had, Lake Street bus, and I think that has been eliminated. Even me going to high school at Westinghouse High School was a means of transportation for that corridor and that particular line. So I would like to see funds or see something to improve Lake Street as well. And then last but not least, I think it's very important for us to understand that we are considered working class and middle class citizens, and our aldermen and our mayors in support of middle class. I think we should have some type of formula in place in order to deal with some of the business owners and co-residents that's throughout our Kinsey corridor and the downtown area. I think it's an injustice for them to have to deal with certain things of being a taxpayer and a owner within the area. So those are some of the things I definitely would believe that we should look at using the TIF. And then last but not least, what measurements do we have when we're dealing with the 30% or the 20% for the seniors or the, I know sometimes we find ourselves where we do not make sure that the developers and or those subsidized houses are meeting their quotas. And what do we have in place to make sure that they're either going, Ryan mentioned that they're going to be at 20% or trying to have a goal of 30%. I work for the city. Those sometimes are, they'll pay penalties or they don't meet their thresholds and the city kind of overlook at that. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Walker, and thank you so much for everyone who participated and shared their comments. Yes.
This is tech support, Kamal. There are some people on the phone. I just want to mention that they can press *9 to raise their hand in Zoom.
Okay, so for those of you who are on the phone and not using Zoom, if you have comments you'd like to make during this public hearing on this matter, please press, is it *9, Kamal?
That's correct, ma'am.
All right, great, thank you. And I see that Tony has raised his hand. Tony, if you'd like to make a comment, you can begin.
Hi, my name's Tony Brummel. Good afternoon, everyone. I've been in the area since 1993, where my company Victory Records started full-time before it was moving around the city. From there, we moved from 1035 Lake to 1837 Fulton. And then in 1999 to 346 Justine, where I had 30,000 square feet. I sold Victory right before the pandemic. We were the biggest independent, we were the biggest record company in Chicago. Didn't really get any credit for that. Never saw any TIF credit for that. I live on Grand Avenue between Levitt and Hoyne. My home is on 5 city lots, so it's a big property. I did well for myself, and I own a lot of other properties in the area from condos and other lots. Since 1993, I have never seen any improvements with this TIF Fiesta. Nothing, zero, nada. All I've seen is under the table nonsense over and over. We need security. We need more police. We need cameras. And we also need a strategy. We need transparency. And we need a plan of what's going to go down with this $270 million. Because what you guys are doing, what the city's doing, what City Hall is doing, is what you're pushing your best players out. Some of us are pretty good players, and we pay a lot of money in taxes. And forget about property taxes, sales taxes, state taxes. People that make a lot of money pay a lot of money. You need us. People work for us, meaning public servants, but we're the servants. When I moved on Grand Avenue, I had 2 lots. Again, now I have 5. That's my residence. I had 0 cameras 17 years ago. Guess how many I have now? 36. There's a reason for that. This TIF money needs to go to supporting and building up the area, not these other agendas, not hooking up these bogus developers who don't care, don't live here, and aren't invested here. Those are my comments. This money needs to be put to use properly. The scam and the charade needs to end. Have a great day. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak? Kamal, do you see any other hands raised?
No other hand raised, Jim.
Okay, for the members of the public who are on the phone, if you'd like to make a comment, you can press *9. I'd like to thank everyone who made comments during the public portion of the meeting. I see that Alderman Burnett, I can see him on our screen. I'm going to go back to, if Alderman Burnett is with us today and would like to make a comment, I'd like to give him the opportunity to speak.
excuse me one moment, with a bunch of aldermen is talking. But I'm at the budget hearings. First of all, I want to say thank you to everyone. I'd like to thank the Department of Planning. Definitely, we need to extend this TIF. There's still a lot of work to be done in that area. And, you know, all of the things that are happening in this community is adding to the TIF. This is one of the fastest growing TIFs. Quite honestly, this TIF right here helps to supplement the city budget, has been doing it for many years. If it wasn't for this TIF, this is the only area where when during the pandemic that everything was still going on and money was still coming from this area to go into the TIF, but also going to the city coffers. There is still a lot of infrastructure work being done. There's a lot of work being done on Grand Avenue. I'm sorry about the dust and everything like that. A lot of work being done on Hubbard Street, a lot of work being done on Fulton Street, and we're doing a lot of work on Lake Street also. This TIF is needed to continue to do infrastructure. It's needed to help with the Metro train coming to the Ashland area, which is going to enhance the community and bring more people to spend money in the city of Chicago. This TIF is a money maker for the city of Chicago, have been and still is and will continue to be if we extend it, but also is going to help us to get more affordable housing in an area that is one of the most expensive areas in the city of Chicago. So I think it's a great thing. I commend those guys who came up with some of those ideas about more cameras. We'll put more cameras. We'll do more for security. Right now, I'm talking with some folks in Springfield trying to see if we can change some legislation in Springfield to be able to use some of the TIF dollars for public safety, right? Not just for this area, but for all over the city, but it has to be legislated in Springfield. Yeah, we can use it for cameras, but I want to be able to use it for security guards and other things like that in the community. So we're working on the Springfield level to try to work on that. But this TIF being extended is a benefit for the city of Chicago because this TIF is a money maker for that area and also for the city of Chicago. It served its purpose and it continued to serve more things for the city of Chicago. So I support it 100%. And I ask for everyone else for their support also. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Burnett, for joining us and for your comments. I'd like to acknowledge that Vice Chair Newsom and Commissioner Gomez have joined this meeting. If there are no further questions or comments, we will now adjourn the public hearing and reopen the regular CDC meeting so that we can call the item to a vote. The resolution before us recommends to the City Council of the City of Chicago the approval of the redevelopment plan for the Kinsey Industrial Conservation Area Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project Area, Amendment Number 2, and the adoption of Amendment Number 2 for the area. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Commissioner Wheat.
Thank you, Secretary Wheat. Do I have a second?
Second, Commissioner Davis.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. I will now call the roll. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act, all votes are to be conducted by roll call so that each member's vote on each issue can be identified and recorded. Please signify your vote on approval of the motion by saying yes, no, or abstain. Vice Chair Newsom.
Yes.
Secretary Wheat.
Yes.
Commissioner Buford.
Yes.
Commissioner Cepeda. Commissioner Chan McKibben. Commissioner Cox. Commissioner Curtis.
Yes.
Commissioner Davis.
Yes.
Commissioner Gomez.
Yes.
Commissioner Griggs. Commissioner Thomas.
Yes.
Commissioner Trevino.
Yes.
And Chairwoman Butler votes yes. The motion passes. Commissioners, for our second item of old business, we are again required to recess from our regular CDC meeting in order to hold a required public hearing on the amendment of an existing TIF. Specifically, the Department of Planning and Development will be requesting approval of the redevelopment plan for the proposed Pulaski Corridor TIF redevelopment project area, Amendment Number 3, And to that end, we'll be accepting public comments. So we will now, again, recess from the regular meeting of the CDC Commission in order to hold a public hearing on the matter of the proposed Pulaski Corridor TIF redevelopment project area, amendment number 3, and to recommend or oppose adoption of the tax increment financing for the area. Beth McGuire will present the staff report on behalf of the Department of Planning and Development. Beth, you may begin.
Sorry, Commissioner, just trying to get my screen how it should be. Can everybody see that?
No, we see your file path.
You see what? The file path?
No, we
Shoot,
don't
okay.
see. We don't see
Sorry, sharing the wrong screen.
Beth, you had it earlier. You had the PowerPoint earlier.
Okay, let me try again. Sorry, I was flipping it to the other screen.
We see the PowerPoint. You just have to go full screen.
Okay, now you can see it. Okay. Okay. Now is it set?
View full screen.
Looks good, Beth.
Okay. Sorry about that. Nope, I'm sorry. I don't know what's. I know, I'm trying to.
You know, from
I,
up top. Oh, there you go. You're good.
Sorry about that. It wouldn't work for some reason. Okay. Now that we're set. Sorry about that again. Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Beth McGuire, and I'm the project manager with the Department of Planning and Development. Here with me today is Anne Maroney of Johnson Research, the TIF consultant on this amendment. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss the amendment of the Pulaski Corridor Tax Increment Financing, or TIF district. The main purpose for why we are here is to extend the TIF district for an additional 12-year period to allow for further development of the project area. The overall goal of this is to ensure that the district will be an ongoing financial resource for
Excuse
project.
me, Beth, I'm going to ask that all the commissioners place their phones on mute, please, or their screens on mute. Commissioner Buford, thank you. All right, please begin.
Do you want me to start over or?
No, just continue. Thanks, Beth.
Okay, the main purpose for why we're here is to extend the TIF district for an additional 12-year period to allow for the further development of the project area. The overall goal of this is to ensure that the TIF district will be an ongoing financial resource for projects that will continue the positive momentum that has been happening on the North Avenue as part of the department's larger Invest Southwest strategy. As part of this extension process, we will amend the termination date from December 31st, 2023 to December 31st, 2035, revise the budget, update the land use plan, and make minor changes to the plan. You can see this is the boundary map. The district as a whole runs northwest roughly along the Milwaukee District North Metro line, bounded by Belmont Avenue on the north, Grand Avenue to the south, and Pulaski, Harding, and Lowell Avenues on the east and west. The entire TIF area measures 384 acres. The aerial that you see is the added area or expansion area, which is 1.65 acres. And you can see where it is on the map in orange toward the bottom of the picture. It includes parcels on the west side of Pulaski Road, north of North Avenue. In order to establish a TIF district, the State TIF Act requires that certain eligibility factors that legally demonstrate that an area qualifies be present. For improved land, at least 3 of 13 factors must be present for the area to qualify as a conservation area. For vacant land, the city must establish that at least 2 eligibility factors are present in order to qualify for TIF designation. A study was performed and it was determined that the added area qualifies as a combination improved and vacant area. The improved portion of the expansion area, outlined in blue, exhibits 3 eligibility factors: deterioration of buildings and structures, obsolescence of buildings or structures, and excessive vacancies. There is 1 building in this improved area and it has been vacant for many years. The vacant portion of the expansion area, outlined in orange, exhibits 2 eligibility factors: diversity of ownership and deterioration of adjacent structures. In addition, it is possible that environmental remediation also may be required on the vacant parcels. This building is located in the improved section of the added area and shows signs of deterioration, as you can see. This former industrial use is no longer suited to modern standards. And here we have the Pioneer Bank building. The added area is directly adjacent to the Pioneer Bank building. And although the building is clearly a tremendous asset to the community that should be restored, it is in poor condition and demonstrates signs of deterioration. The redevelopment plan includes a general land use plan of future development within the TIF district. There is a proposed development project involving the Pioneer Bank and nearby parcels, which calls for a mix of uses, which will include both residential and commercial uses. The land use plan has been amended to reflect the actual and proposed land uses in the entire area. Each TIF district has a list of goals and objectives. As we've noted before, the big picture goal is certainly the redevelopment of this general area, but more specifically, the goals include attracting new industrial and business development within the area, especially currently vacant sites, developing new affordable housing opportunities, improving infrastructure and parks, including access to green space along the 606 and a safer environment for pedestrians and cyclists, and creating new job opportunities within the redevelopment area. The TIF funds have been successfully used in many projects in the area. Encuentro Square Phase 1 is an affordable housing development currently underway on Hamlin Avenue, and senior housing at North Avenue in Pulaski was built several years ago. Ames Elementary and various streets have also received TIF funds for improvements. The Small Business Improvement Fund, or SPIF, has been used to improve almost 40 properties on the commercial corridors of this TIF since 2007. In order to make future projects a reality, the redevelopment plan amendment includes an updated budget to capture the increment that will be generated during the additional 12 years of the TIF. The expected increment to be generated and expended is $161 million. The original budget was $64 million. As you can see, it's expected that the majority of funds for this TIF are in the affordable housing construction, property assembly, and public infrastructure line item. We anticipate that future TIF funded projects in the area will include continued economic development, most immediately with the next phase of the Encuentro Square project, as well as the redevelopment of the Pioneer Bank building. That said, we also expect that further investments in the Small Business Improvement Fund, infrastructure, schools, and parks will continue. Alderman Cardona and Alderman Maldonado have been supportive of this TIF amendment, but could not attend today's meeting. Thank you for your time, and we are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Beth, for your presentation and for letting us know that neither Alderman Cardona or Maldonado could participate in today's meeting. No written statements from the public were submitted on this matter. Anne Maroney from Johnson Research Group is again the TIF consultant for this item and is here to help answer questions. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the department or the TIF consultant? If you do, please raise your hand and I will call on you. Come on, can I have the commissioners on the screen, please? So I can see if any hands are raised. Okay, I don't see any hands being raised by the commission. I'm sorry, Commissioner Gomez.
Hi, yeah, my question is in part to the parking situation with the current building already there. Just any study on the parking situation? That's a really busy street. A little familiar with the area. Just if someone can talk about what's being done for parking.
So as part of the TIF study, we don't do.
I'm sorry,
parking.
could you?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Speaking, could you please?
Sorry, for the record, my name is Beth McGuire with the Department of Planning and Development. As part of the TIF study, we did not conduct a parking analysis. That type of thing would be done on like an individual development basis to see what the parking needs might be. And also as part of maybe a larger plan for the commercial area, but it's not part of this type of study.
Commissioner Gomez, do you have questions or comments?
No, I mean, I guess it's always, I thought that was something that does get at least reviewed for these type of developments, at least, or was there a study in terms of like parking may not be necessary because of, you know, transit lines or anything of that nature. So yeah, it's just something that I'd like to be mindful of, parking and accessibility. Thank you.
Okay, I believe that the TIF consultant, Anne Maroney, has her hand raised.
Hi, thanks, Anne Maroney for Johnson Research Group. I don't think Commissioner Gomez, this is exactly what you're looking for, but in terms of parking, we do evaluate existing structures and whether there is sufficient parking for those structures. And as part of that, we looked at the single building that exists there. It takes up the entire project and the entire site. And that's one of the reasons we identified it as obsolete, because there's no capacity to park for that building. And there's no access for ingress and egress or loading and unloading, you know. So those are some of the aspects that make it obsolete from a TIF eligibility standpoint. But I think your question is really more about future development and how that will be accommodated. And I know I'll let DPD speak to that, but I understand they have very rigorous standards for parking.
Commissioner Gomez, do you have further questions or comments?
No, that's fine. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other members of the commission that have questions or comments? I don't see any hands raised by members of the commission. Kamal, can you confirm that for me?
That's correct, Chairman. No other hand raised.
All right, great, thank you. Since this is a public hearing under the Illinois TIF Act, the limits on numbers of individuals allowed to speak shall not apply. The chair will now call upon members of the public who have used the raise your hand feature to be recognized by the chair. Each person called upon by the chair to speak will be limited to 3 minutes per agenda item. Kamal, do we have any hands raised from members of the public on this item?
I don't see any hand raised.
Okay, for those members of the public who are on the phone, if you'd like to speak, I believe you have to press *9.
That's correct, *9.
So I don't see any hands raised. We will continue if there are no further questions or comments, we will now adjourn the public hearing and reopen the regular CDC meeting so that we may call the item to a vote. The resolution before us recommends approval of the redevelopment plan for the proposed Pulaski Corridor TIF redevelopment project area amendment number 3 and the adoption of amendment number 3 for the area. Do I have a motion? I'm sorry, who is that? Was that Commissioner Newsom?
Yes.
Commissioner
thank
Newsom,
you.
I think you're on
Thank
two
you.
devices. That's why we're not able to hear you.
Yes, Vice Chair Newsom, if you could remove one of or shut down one of your two devices, that would be helpful so that we can hear you more clearly. Do I have a second?
Gomez seconds.
Commissioner Gomez, was that you? Thank you. Okay, I will now call the roll. And thank you for the second. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act, all votes are to be conducted by roll call so that each member's vote on each issue can be identified and recorded. Please signify your vote on approval of the motion by saying yes, no, or abstain. Vice Chair Newsom.
Yes.
Secretary Wheat.
Yes.
Commissioner Buford.
Yes.
Commissioner Cepeda. Commissioner Chan McKibben.
Abstain. I just joined, so I didn't hear most of the presentation.
All right,
Thank
thank you for joining us. Commissioner Cox, Commissioner Curtis,
Yes.
Commissioner Davis,
Yes.
Commissioner Gomez,
Yes.
Commissioner Griggs, Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner Trevino,
Yes.
and Chairwoman Butler votes yes, the motion passes.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I believe Commissioner Cox may have joined as well.
right.
Greetings. My
Thank you.
apologies. I didn't see the presentation, so I won't be voting on that particular item. I'll wait for the next one.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Cox, for abstaining and for joining us. Commissioners, for our third item of old business.
Thank you, commissioners.
Commissioners, for our third item of old business, we are once again required to recess from our regular CDC meeting in order to hold a required public hearing on the designation of a new TIF. Specifically, the Department of Planning and Development will be requesting approval of the redevelopment plan for the proposed Red Line Extension TIF redevelopment project area, and to that end, will be accepting public comments. So we will now recess from the regular meeting of the Community Development Commission in order to hold a public hearing on the matter of the proposed Red Line Extension TIF redevelopment project area, and to recommend or oppose adoption of the tax increment financing for the area. Tim Jeffries, Lee Mooney, and Fran Lafleur-Rude will present the staff report on behalf of the Department of Planning and Development. You may begin your presentation.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Butler and members of the Community Development Commission. For the record, my name is Tim Jeffries, Deputy Commissioner in the Department of Planning. We are here today to request your recommendation to approve the designation of the Red Line Extension Transit TIF District. This TIF builds upon the CTA's ongoing investment on the North Side's Red Purple Modernization Phase 1 project, which was initially approved back in 2016. A Red Line Transit TIF would similarly provide matching funds for the Red Line Extension project, a 5.6 mile, 4-station extension of the Red Line from its current terminus at 95th Street to 130th Street. With a total cost of $3.6 billion, the Red Line Extension is the single largest project in CTA history and is certainly one of the largest, if not the largest, infrastructure investments in the far south side. The scope of the project alone, however, does still manage to undersell the overall importance of the project. The Red Line Extension represents a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to profoundly improve the quality of life for far south side residents, greatly enhance the city and the region's mobility, and will catalyze new development and future economic growth, including an estimated $500 million in development immediately adjacent to new stations. The designation of this proposed transit TIF is a critical first step to ensuring all of that can occur, though. I'd like to ask Leah Dawson-Mooney, the Director of Strategic Planning and Policy with the Chicago Transit Authority, to walk through our presentation today, and it will provide you with more detail about the Red Line Extension itself, as well as the proposed use of TIF here.
Thanks so much, Tim. I'm Leah Mooney, Director of Strategic Planning and Policy at CTA. I would like to share my screen, but I think I need some help from tech support. So I'll keep talking while that happens. So let me just say thank you so much, Chairwoman Hatton Butler and the commissioners of the CDC for hearing this item today. And thank you to everyone who has come today to speak about this new TIF designation. I'm also joined by Fran Rude, who is a Senior Vice President with SB Friedman, who's been our TIF consultant, and she and I will be sharing, there we go, she and I will be sharing the presentation duties today. So just confirming, I can see you still, so just nod your head. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Fantastic. All right. So thanks in advance, for walking this through with us today. We are going to cover the project overview and then talk a little bit about how this TIF will be working, including some differences with a transit TIF, and then finish with public approval process steps. So this, as Tim said, is really a historic moment and a chance for us to make something happen that has been talked about for decades. A lot of the people that are supporters of this project have been supporters for a very long time. In 2004, this group of supporters, as Developing Communities Project, had a non-binding referendum placed on the ballot for the 9th and the 34th wards that demonstrated community support to extend the red line to the city limits. Following that, there was an alternatives analysis process that CTA did, and it selected through that process and based on community feedback, the Union Pacific Railroad as the alternative, as a locally preferred alternative, which was formally selected in 2009. We continued work on that at CTA, publishing the draft environmental impact statement in 2016, then completing a preferred additional analysis to ultimately select a preferred alignment, which was a hybrid of what was the east and west options of the locally preferred alternative. In late 2020, we entered what's called the project development phase of the federal New Start funding program, and we are now at the end of that 2-year time period, or coming up to it, and have hit some incredibly important milestones, including the one that we're at right now. But listed here is completing that environmental review with the final environmental impact statement, the record of decision, and also completing our 30% design. I think it's worth noting that we've made more progress in the last few years than has been made in the last several decades, and that's really positioned us to take advantage of a larger federal program and to be able to make this project really a reality. So we're very excited to be here today. Just a little recap on what the project is. This is a map of the future alignment. It's a 5.6-mile heavy rail extension named for the Union Pacific Railroad tracks that it follows for much of it. It's elevated from where it leaves 95th Terminal, which is in the Highway Trench, and then it goes along I-57 and finally meets up with the Union Pacific Railroad, which is the Union Pacific tracks are at ground level and CTA would be elevated. Then crosses from west to east at about 107th place, and then it continues at elevated until it goes to grade following crossing the Metro Electric and CN district tracks, or CN tracks. And then in this hashed area, we would have a new rail yard and shop. There are 4 new stations at 103rd Street in Eggleston here, 111th Street in Eggleston, which will be very close to and serve the Roseland Medical District. The Michigan Station here at about 116th, which will be the southern anchor of that Roseland commercial corridor in South Michigan Avenue. And then at 130th, which will be adjacent to Oakdale Gardens and serve the communities in that area. There will be multimodal connections at each station, and those will include bus connections, bike, pedestrian, and park and ride facilities. And this yard and shop will serve the entire red line. This is at its core an equity project. This is a part of the city that has more residents living in poverty and has more residents who are unemployed or underemployed. This project is about both bringing new resources to the community and also helping people access resources outside their community in a more effective way. In terms of the project itself, it will be up to a 30-minute time savings for people traveling from 130th Street to the Loop, which is a significant quality of life change. And that will bring more jobs and other opportunities within reach of a reasonable commute. This is a part also of the city and region that has some of the longest commute times. That will lead to a 46% increase in newly accessible jobs. We're also very focused, as Tim said, and I'll talk about in a minute, on the economic development that will be stimulated in the area. So not just bringing people out of the community, but bringing opportunities into the community. This connectivity with the CTA network is critical. People depend on the CTA today. 22% of the households in this area do not have a car. And this type of effort is really in line with the city's climate work. And it's really important to be able to have this type of option for people so that we can reduce greenhouse gases and meet our climate mitigation efforts. This is a rendering from a study, and it's actually been used also in an RFP that this CDC has considered. This is from the study that we're doing together with DPD. So we got a federal pilot program grant in order to be able to study how to bring economic development in concert with this extension investment. And that's really important because everybody, all these different departments have different tools at their disposal. So we work together with planning, we've worked with housing and the Cook County Land Bank Authority. This plan to think about how to bring equitable TOD that reflects community involvement and community interests is something that we have really prioritized, and it dovetails with all the Invest Southwest and other work that's happening in this area, which is really exciting. It helps us create a coordinated strategy for economic development, thinking about how to bring catalyzing investments, how to bring private sector investments, and also how to maintain continued affordability and bring multimodal connectivity. We hope to bring this to the Plan Commission for approval and adoption later this year or early next year. And fundamentally, this is about having a better system for all of us, right? So when you think about a rail system, it's really a network. An improvement on one part of the red line benefits the whole red line. It opens up new destinations and opportunities. It also helps people who live in this area today access jobs and opportunities outside the area in a reliable way. And that helps employers and that helps our entire economy. I also mentioned the rail yard and new shop, and that is something that is supporting increased capacity that we'll need when we build the extension, but it also benefits the rest of the red line from Howard all the way to the far south side as we are able to provide maintenance of our rail vehicles and support reliability. And finally, this equitable investment really supports a stronger Chicago for all. And we've looked at some of the work that places like Metropolitan Planning Council that was mentioned earlier have done, looking at what the impacts have been from some of our historic economic and racial segregation in the city. And we think that this is part of the path to correcting some of that. This investment is also going to support a significant number of new jobs. Transportation investments themselves actually have a significant economic investment. And this one is no exception. We expect to have a significant number of both direct project jobs and then jobs created from the economic stimulus of this investment. You know, this is money that otherwise would not be coming to the city. This is a competitive program for transit investments. What we do when we think about equity investments is not just what we're building, but how we're building it. We've been spending a lot of time and energy with our diversity department, putting out information about the contract opportunities and doing networking events with small and disadvantaged business enterprises. DBE is actually the federally compliant version of MWBE. And in addition to that, we're working with them closely on workforce development and specifically on bringing on workforce partners who are going to work with community providers and support recruitment, training efforts, and getting people prepared for these jobs. Part of what we want to do is to think about this as a pipeline, not just job to job, but how to bring people in through apprenticeship programs, through training programs into jobs that have family sustaining wages. And finally, we want to coordinate and continue to coordinate with labor unions to understand what's needed for each of these different types of high-skilled jobs, including professional services jobs as well. This is what our timeline looks like. So today we're towards the end of 2022. We expect to launch a request for qualifications for our major design build contractor later this month, actually. And that will really kick off a more than year-long process of bringing on a design builder. This is a long and intensive effort. And as we do that, we will be actively working to solidify all the federal funding and bring this project to fruition. And this local match is a key part of that. This local match is what we need to unlock the New Starts funding, which is competitive funds from the federal government. And we are expecting to have a significant award for that based on the fact that this whole program was increased through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. That would all lead us to being able to award the construction contract later in 2004 and begin construction in 2005, opening for service in, did I say 2005? 2025. I'm apparently losing some decades in this presentation. And then we would be open for service in 2029. This is a picture of the funding stack here. So like any other major construction project like this that's federally funded, we have to also bring resources from the local side. CTA right now is funding the current phase that we're in from bond funding primarily. We have gotten some competitive federal funding also from the Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Program, and we are going to be asking for additional funds from that program. That was also increased through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. We have asked the federal government for 60% New Start share, and then we would need 26% to come from the transit TIF, which would be $950 million. And Tim had mentioned earlier that there was a transit TIF also set up for the Red Purple Modernization Phase 1 project on the north side, and that provided about 30% of those project costs. And I'm now going to turn it over to Fran Ruud, our TIF expert, and she's going to talk a little bit about the RLE Transit TIF itself. Go ahead, Fran.
Great. Thanks, Leah. And thanks, Chairwoman and Commissioners, for the time this afternoon. For the record, I'm Fran Ruud. I'm a Senior Vice President with SB Friedman. And because this is a public hearing, we really wanted to start by giving just a reminder and an overview of what a traditional TIF looks like, because this can be really confusing before we jump into how a transit TIF differs. In Illinois, we pay property taxes based on the value of our properties, and that's established by the Cook County Assessor's Office on a 3-year cycle. So 2021 is a reassessment year, and then that will happen again in 2024 and going forward. And business owners, residents pay taxes based on that property value and the tax rate that's applied to the property value. Once that revenue is collected, it's distributed to the taxing districts. So City of Chicago, Cook County, Chicago Public Schools, all of the taxing bodies that overlap the City of Chicago receive their portion of the property tax revenue, and it kind of goes into their general funds to be distributed and used to fund different programs within the taxing body. When a TIF district is created, the base property value within the TIF area is frozen. That's this area that you see in the dark green rectangle on the slide. And for the duration of the TIF district, the property tax revenue that results from that portion of the property value, that goes to the taxing bodies as it normally would. But any increase in property value generates increment. This is the green triangle that you can see here. Property values grow over time. That's just sort of naturally how values change. And so over this 23-year period, you would see an increase in value, and the increment is used to invest back in the TIF district. And can only be used for certain types of projects within the TIF. This is for a traditional TIF. It's important to note that that's not a new tax for properties within the TIF district, and tax rates are the same for properties within the district and outside of the district for the duration of the TIF. Moving on to think about what a transit TIF is. Functionally, this works the same way in that it's not a new TIF district or a new tax for properties within the transit TIF, but the allocation of revenue happens differently within a transit TIF. So in a transit TIF, we still freeze the base value of the properties at the beginning of the life of the transit TIF, but any incremental revenue that's generated is actually divided up and shared with the taxing districts. So Chicago Public Schools receive their full share of the tax rate. They're made whole with a transit TIF. So they receive about half of the increment that's generated within the TIF district, the transit TIF district. And then the remaining increment is distributed between the other taxing bodies, who collectively receive 20%. And then 80% of that remaining non-CPS share is used for transit. And it's really only allowed to be used for certain transit projects, as I'm going to talk about on the next slide. You can see here, though, that there is a difference, and really importantly, a difference in how that revenue is allocated. The Illinois TIF law was amended, to allow for the transit TIF in 2016. It was actually amended again in 2021 to make some adjustments. And it really specifies that transit TIF is only allowed to fund transit improvements for particular projects. This includes the Red Purple Modernization Program, for which there's already a TIF district in place, the Red Line Extension, and then 2 other projects, one on the Blue Line Forest Park branch, and then also Union Station. State law allows a transit TIF to be created, and it can only extend from up to a half mile from these specific projects and the associated train lines. Transit TIFs are put in place for 35 years instead of a 23-year period, and this really aligns more closely with the typical financing sources that are put in place for these type of long-term transit projects. And importantly, the eligibility criteria are really related to the type of transit project and what's specified in the TIF Act. There's no consideration of deterioration or other blighting factors like you heard about for the other TIF amendment that was talked about earlier today. Transit TIFs do keep existing TIF districts intact. This allows the city to continue to pursue other economic development initiatives within the transit TIF area, and that's really important since the district is in place for 35 years. And for this transit TIF in particular, as Leah talked about, this is going into an area that one of the goals is to really spur economic development and allow for those initiatives to continue. There's not a bullet point related to this, but both for transit TIFs and for traditional TIF districts, there is a rigorous public process that's required, and we're in the middle of that, and I'll talk a little bit about that additional process later in the presentation as well. We'll now shift and talk about the Red Line Extension transit TIF itself. There are 2 geographies that are important to keep in mind. One is the Transit Facility Improvement Area. That's the map that you see on the left here. The TFIA for the Red Line Extension extends from Madison on the north end to 134th Street on the south end. And it includes all properties that are within a half mile on either side of the existing Red Line and also the Red Line Extension. Again, this boundary is established by Illinois TIF law, and it says clearly that this is the boundary allowed for the RLE project. The TFIA, it defines the maximum boundary for the transit TIF, but also the area where the transit TIF funds can be spent. So transit TIF revenue can only be spent within this TFIA. The map on the right shows the redevelopment project area or the transit TIF. These are the parcels that generate the revenue within the transit TIF. This excludes all existing TIF districts, as I mentioned. And one additional difference from a traditional TIF is that the parcels don't have to be adjacent to one another. If we go to the next slide, we'll zoom into the RLE transit TIF area in more detail. This, again, the dark parcels in gray, those are parcels that are within the transit TIF or the RPA. Those run from Madison on the north end down to Pershing on the south end. Anything you see in white here that's within the TFIA, those are existing TIF districts, or in some cases, parks. The Grant Park is excluded, and some parcels around the perimeter have been excluded because they don't fall entirely within the TFIA. But otherwise, the transit TIF includes all parcels from Madison down to Pershing. This boundary was established to generate $950 million in the local match needed to support the project, and that's based on existing projections. Again, important to note that the residents and businesses within the transit TIF are not going to see an increase in taxes compared to properties that are outside of the transit TIF. We'll talk through a few of the eligibility factors and other components of the RLE TIF plan. As I mentioned, this transit TIF is located entirely within the TFIA as it's required to be. TFIA would be created by City Council as part of the ordinances establishing the transit TIF. The Red Line Extension Program is specifically identified in the TIF Act, and all parcels within the TFIA are expected to substantially benefit from the Red Line Extension project. Leah talked about all of the potential benefits of RLE. The land uses that are in the RLE plan are expected to be approved by Plan Commission. That meeting is next week. And the land uses that are shown in the plan conform to the Transit Supportive Development Plan that's expected to be approved by Plan Commission, and also consistent with On to 2050, which is the regional plan created by CMAP. The proposed budget for the Red Line Extension Transit TIF is $950 million in project costs of the $3.6 billion total project costs for the Red Line Extension. You'll see in the plan there's an additional $9 million in financing costs, and that really establishes the upper limit for what can be spent under the transit TIF. Transit TIF funds can only be spent on RLE project costs, so that includes the rail extension itself, the stations, park and ride facilities, and the storage yard and maintenance facility, and the allowable TIF eligible costs within those relevant categories. Assistance to the CTA for this project would be approved through an intergovernmental agreement with the city after the TIF plan is put in place. We are about halfway through the public approval process. There was a public meeting held in July, on July 21st. That was a hybrid meeting, both virtual and in person. The redevelopment plan was made publicly available on July 27th. And then the project was introduced to CDC, you'll remember, in early August, followed by a joint review board with the impacted taxing districts September 1st. Next week, there's Plan Commission, and then in December, the ordinances approving the transit TIF will go to Finance Committee first, which is another opportunity for public comment, followed by City Council in mid-December. And with that, Leah, I'll hand it back to you to close out the presentation.
Thank you, Fran. And just that City Council date is an approximation still, just for awareness. Transit, so an equity TIF is not actually a legal term, I've been told, but that's what this is about. It's taking some of the success from investments that have happened downtown and on the near south side, and allowing us to then create a project on the far south side that will benefit far south side residents, really all Red Line riders, and as I've talked about, employers that want to employ people from this area, as well as a citywide and a regional investment or regional impact from this significant investment, and also from living in a more equitable city. Citywide impacts, I think, are to really to think about how we are all affected by a significant investment like this. And then in terms of who pays, Fran explained a little bit about this. Really what we're doing is we're taking increment that's generated from growth in property values that's happening in this northern area here, but based on some investments and growth that's happened there, and allowing that to stimulate and transform the far south side. But ultimately that resource is coming from really a collective pool of property tax receipts. So I think it's just important to think about that TIF is a great mechanism to think about how to get these things funded. And in this case, it's also really an equity TIF. And so I guess I'll just end today saying, thank you for everybody's time today. This is the equity investment that the far south side needs and deserves. This is something that will really change the landscape of our city. It will provide mobility for people that are transit dependent and also in areas that are predominantly minority and low income. And that's important. It's also bringing billions of dollars to the city. And that investment is going to be invested in contracts for companies across the city, and that will spur economic development. There are a lot of efforts right now across the city to focus on bringing development to the south and west sides, and this will be supportive and in alignment with that. And we really do have this special opportunity right now with what's happened with the Biden administration and their focus not just on this type of infrastructure investment and the funding that they've put there, but also on equity-based projects and thinking about their Justice 40 initiative. So with that, I think we can turn it back to you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Kamal, if I could have the full screen, please, of participants. So I don't see, Kamal, can you confirm with me, do we have any aldermen on with us right now that would like to speak on this matter?
I don't see any alderman, chairwoman. They have their budget hearings going on.
Okay. Well, perhaps an alderperson or two may join us during the course of this presentation, as Alderman Burnett did during one of the earlier agenda items. So as I mentioned earlier, 2 written comments have been submitted for this meeting. I will read them now. This is the first statement. To Chairperson Hatton Butler and the CDC Commission, my name is Deborah Truss, and I am a member of the Red Line Extension Coalition Board. Also, I am one of the founders of the Red Line Extension Coalition, which initially originated from Developing Communities Project, founded by President Barack Obama. The DCP Red Line Extension Project was a forerunner advocacy organization for the CTA Red Line Extension Project. In 1972, shortly after relocating from Inglewood, California, my family moved to Roseland on Dr. Martin Luther King Drive across from Palmer Park. I have witnessed the disinvestment and economic downward spiral of a thriving middle income neighborhood that had an economic vitality commercial district. In 1969, Mayor Richard J. Daley proclaimed to extend the CTA Red Line extension from 95th Street to the far south city limit. However, the transit system was extended north and west, except the far south. The advocacy efforts of the DCP Red Line Extension Project members was successfully demonstrated by repetitively appealing at the CTA board meetings. As a result, the designated 5.6 mile Red Line Extension Project, RLEP, will create equitable transit-oriented development around the 4 designated stations: 103rd Street and 111th Street near Eggleston Avenue, Michigan Avenue near 116th Street, and 130th Street near Oakdale Garden. Today, I am advocating for the approval of the proposed RLEP Transit TIF District. Why? The approval of the Transit TIF District will enable the RLEP to be the forerunner capital investment project and the catalyst for other proposed redevelopment projects in the greater Roseland community and for the commercial corridors, which will result in community revitalization, economic vitality, neighborhood vitality, meaning that measurable increases in walkability and access to retail shops, mixed-use commercial, career employment, healthcare, supportive wraparound services, community amenities, transportation, and quality affordable housing will be able to attribute to the greater Roseland's overall community revitalization. In addition, if the needed funding is secured to start construction targeted to begin in 2025, the Transit TIF will be a funding asset to bring a $3.6 billion investment to Chicago and to the far south side. Moreover, CTA needs to obtain a local match to secure more than $2 billion in federal New Starts funding and is seeking to attain the average awarded maximum up to 60% in federal New Starts funding. Also, CTA is identifying and seeking other federal funding. And the Transit TIF could provide an estimated $950 million in funding, which is 26% of the 40% needed in non-federal New Start funding. Why is the Transit TIF special? Authorized by state legislation in 2016, it can only fund transit improvements for specific projects. It can extend up to a half mile from specific transit facilities. Transit TIFs can be designated for 35 years in comparison to the 23-year designation for traditional TIFs. This timing aligns more closely with financing mechanisms most commonly used for large-scale, long-term transit projects. It does not require an area to be blighted or a conservation area. The existing TIF districts will remain unchanged as is so that economic development initiatives can continue. CPS receives their allocated full proportional share of the increment. 20% of remaining tax increment, non-CPS, is shared with other taxing bodies. And if businesses or residents are located in the transit TIF district, they will not see an increase in their taxes. Respectfully submitted, Deborah Truss, Red Line Extension Coalition Board. The second statement that was submitted. Good afternoon, Chairwoman Gwendolyn Hatton Butler, Vice Chairwoman Shirley Newsome, and fellow members of the Chicago Development Commission, CDC. Sustainable Inglewood Initiatives wish to register as present for this historical ordinance to establish a Red Line Extension tax increment financing TIF district. We are pleased that the City of Chicago is moving with zeal to advance the construction of the Red Line Extension project. Indeed, this level of zeal would require the Assembly of Public Finance from local government as a share to the Federal Department of Transportation's New START program. We applauded the administration's willingness to fund the totality of the local match. However, financial obligations to advance the Red Line extension requires participation from all local governments. It is reasonable to expect both the state of Illinois and the County of Cook to contribute to the local federal match. Using the Red Line corridor as a link through Chicago, connecting the far south region to the north region is most intriguing. Certainly, the South Side needs a ready tool to funnel resources stemming from the linked development agreements established at both the new Chicago 78 plan and the North Branch Framework Plan is warranted. Careful and strategic moves on how best to direct those public-private investments are equally warranted. For Greater Inglewood, we hold great expectations on planned development, in particular the Inglewood Nature Trail and its scheduled Green Futures Industry Zone, led by Grow Greater Inglewood, 63rd Street Commercial District, Till Justice Rings strategies along 71st Street, Go Green Racine initiatives, enhanced water features and reopening of Green Line Historic Racine Station, and the continual interest to improve air quality and introduce climate resilience projects. It is important that the Red Line Extension TIF ordinance not undermine our regional zeal to redress public and private inequities that have arrested development. It's our hope that finance tool to fund the extension project would be expanded to include a state and county share, that the TIF district ordinance project budget be streamlined to finance specific construction costs to head off white collar abuses via unwarranted studies and non-federal compliance activities. To this end, thank you CDC for your sense of care. John Paul Jones, founder and president, SCI. And I believe there actually there was a third statement that was submitted that I will read now. Dear Community Development Commission, I am Michael Lafarge, a resident of Roseland, a former CTA and RTA employee, and immediate past president of the Red Line Extension Coalition, RLEC. I and our organization support the proposed transit TIF district for the Red Line Extension project. The proposed transit TIF will provide an estimated $950 million, 26%, needed in local match funding for the Red Line Extension project. Will not overlap or interfere with current TIF areas. Number 3, will not take needed funds from Chicago Public Schools. Number 4, will provide 20% of incremental tax increases to the public bodies. The proposed transit TIF allow a dream deferred to come true. A dream, one, which was proposed by CTA in 1958 when the Dan Ryan Express was planned. 2, which which Mayor Richard J. Daley promised to Roseland in 1969. 3, which was discussed during my employ at RTA. 4, which will bring jobs, equitable transportation, and an improved quality of life that includes transit-oriented development. If transit TIF can be successfully implemented for the North Side Red Purple Line Modernization RPM project, it is only equitable that a transit TIF be approved to fund the Red Line Extension project. Commission members, there is a price of segregation, redlining, and deferring dreams. We encourage, ask for, and respectfully demand your support and approval of the transit TIF for the Red Line Extension project. Thank you, Michael E. Lafargue. And that, I believe, is the end of the 3 public comments that we received on this matter. So as I said earlier, Tim Jeffries, Leah Mooney from the CTA, and Fran Rude from SB Friedman, the TIF consultant, are here to answer your questions. Commissioners, do you have any questions for DPD, the CTA, or the TIF consultant? Commissioner Curtis, you've raised your hand. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chairwoman. My question is regarding the use of eminent domain. What will be the process? I'm assuming it may be necessary, and I would just like clarification as to what the process is if that advances.
Thank you for your question, Commissioner. I can answer that. This is Leah May from CTA.
I'm sorry, could you introduce yourself for the record? And you're a bit garbled.
Oh, sorry, I thought I did. Can you hear me okay?
Now we can, thank you.
Okay, Leah Mooney for the Chicago Transit Authority, answering your question, Commissioner Curtis, on eminent domain. So a couple of things about that. CTA has about 216 parcels to acquire for this project. 103 of those are privately owned, and that includes commercial and residential, and of those, 64 are occupied. We have been talking with community members since 2016, and we will be following the Uniform Relocations Act guidance in terms of compensating property owners and tenants for the the cost of the property, as well as any cost for relocation. So that's a longer conversation, but we have been in communication since 2016. Our goal would be to have negotiated sales that were supported by the property owner, and that's what we're working towards right now. And our next steps on that are to coordinate with the property owners to begin negotiation, and only if that failed would we move towards eminent domain.
What would be the process for that if that becomes necessary for the eminent domain?
The process for that is that our general counsel ultimately makes that decision to move towards eminent domain, and we would engage outside counsel in pursuing that. But again, that is something that we hope to be able to avoid in most cases. And we've been, again, working with community members since 2016.
Thank you.
Commissioner Curtis, any additional questions or comments?
No, that's all I had. Thank you.
Secretary Wheat.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two questions. So first, and maybe this is a question for DPD, can you provide more color on the decision to basically generate increment from the areas of the total TIF district that you did? So most of that is in the northern end of the TIF district, and so essentially, why generate only increment there? Is it due to the financials of the deal, or is there some other color you can provide?
Sure. For the record, Tim Jeffries, Deputy Commissioner with DPD. I think our goal was that we had a figure in mind, that the 950 million that was necessary to make the project go, and we were trying to put as few parcels in the TIF district as possible to generate that amount of money. And we, the analysis started north and moving south. Partially that was just a function of how much is the increment potential for the properties in the loop starting at Madison is just much higher. I think if you look at the total figure, we're able to get to about 960 total, we'll call it, between Madison and Pershing, and then from Pershing all the way down to 134th using that same methodology. We're only anticipating about $43 million over the life of the TIF district. So the increment potential is just much lower, and our strong preference was that we keep those areas south because the increment potential was so low. We keep them out of the transit TIF so that we would be able to use regular TIF in those areas in the future for projects around the stations, because we know that development's coming. We know that these, even with the transit TIF and the new stations, these will still be difficult real estate markets to function in, and we want to have resources available for projects that will, make that flywheel development move, including ETOD, including affordable housing, including all commercial and retail developments.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, if I can ask one more question and likely directing this, thank you, directing this to CTA. Can you provide us more color on where discussions are with USDOT? I guess what I'm looking for is a sense of the likelihood. This is a competitive process, right? So the likelihood that given this action and the action of the other bodies have to vote on it, the likelihood that we'd be successful via the application process.
We have put in a request to be included in the President's federal fiscal year 2024 budget. And I believe that, we will be included in that. So that's a significant step. The next process for us is to achieve entry into engineering. And during that engineering phase, we would be negotiating a full funding grant agreement. And we've targeted that for 2024 to happen just before we award the contract. And that's very typical for their process. So having this local match identified now helps us secure that federal funding and demonstrates to USDOT that we are able to bring those local resources as this negotiation continues. And showing progress on that during the engineering phase, which we hope to enter soon, is really important.
Thank you.
That's
No other
what that
questions. No, that's perfect. Thank you. No other questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Secretary Weed. Commissioner Chan McKibben.
Hello. I have I have two questions. One is the proposed red line extension TIF is mostly in the Chinatown and South Loop areas. And I actually looked at a map of existing TIFs, and looks like the proposed red line extension TIF avoids the areas of, either existing TIFs or expiring TIFs. How would, if there are other community development projects that are needed in the future, how would that work or not work with this TIF? Meaning that if parcels are already taken for this TIF, would that not be available for something else?
Well, I think that, I think if this is.
Tim, could you introduce yourself?
Sorry, yes, Tim Jeffries, Deputy Commissioner with the Department of Planning. If this moves forward, TIF would not be an option here. TIF would be, the increment generated by these parcels would go to the transit TIF and be limited to the red line extension project. That said, there's other arrows in our quiver, so to speak. I know that TIF gets a lot of attention because it's the oldest program we have. It's the biggest program we have. But I would want to look at a map before I definitively say which projects or what programs would and would not be eligible for specific areas and addresses. But we have the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund that provides up to $2.5 million for projects moving forward. We also have a newer program, the Chicago Development Grants, which was funded by the Recovery Plan program. That's been an unbridled success in 2022. I think there's a lot of interest in seeing where that program goes. It certainly will be on board or online for the short term, That has no geographic restrictions, can be used throughout the city. We also have property tax abatements. Those are, commercial and industrial projects can have their property taxes raised by as much as 60% over a 12-year term. It's a very popular program. We have had a number of projects in the sort of greater Chinatown area take advantage of that. And so I think it's, we would be great if we had every resource available for every single project at all times. But I think the reality is that, that's not possible all the time, but that situation and that fact pattern exists already for a lot of different areas, and the department does its best to manage the assets that we have to make sure that good projects are still moving forward, regardless of those tools that we have in any given location.
Thank you. Thank you so much. My other question was a follow-up to Commissioner Curtis's question. So has all property owners that are affected been in contact with DPD, and or what is the process for that?
Are you talking about for eminent domain?
Correct.
Leah, I'll defer to you on that one.
This is Leah Mooney with Chicago Transit Authority. In this question, I say that we have contacted people by door to door, leaving letters, knocking on doors, having conversations, with phone calls. We've had the same person out there since 2016, and we have done door hangers and emails and all kinds of different. We've had open office hours. So we have been making every effort to contact every single person possible. There are probably some people who are not living there who are property owners, and there may be a handful that we still need to try to reach and get in contact with. But I would say the vast majority we have been in contact with for a number of years. And so that's something that I think is really strong in this case. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Commissioner Chan McKibben, any additional questions?
No additional questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My question, I don't know who would answer it, is regarding the 5 wards that are in the RPA. Various aldermen have reached out to me, and they stated that the CTA is in varying community agreements with them. Where are you in those processes? Anything in writing to show the aldermen that the agreements that they have for the community are in place?
This is Leah Mooney with the Chicago Transit Authority. We have been doing outreach with all of the aldermen in the TSIA, including the 5 that are in the RPA. We got a letter of support from Alderman Sigcho Lopez, and we've had continuing conversations with other aldermen about needs in their ward. And we'll continue to work with them on that.
So that means that you're still in discussion, no agreements yet.
We are continuing to work with all of them.
Thank you.
Commissioner Thomas, any additional questions?
No.
Thank you. Commissioner Gomez.
Hi, thank you, Chair. Kind of maybe in follow-up to Commissioner Thomas's. So I know there's going to be the goals, DB goals as per usual on these projects, and that's mostly geared on the construction side of things. But what are we doing, or what's being done on the professional services type work that is probably already that has been undergoing, and that's one question. And the second one is, what programming or goals do we have around the community and ensuring that it's representative of our Black and Brown communities on this project for both the construction and the professional services side?
This is Leah Mooney with CTA. I can answer these questions. So both in terms of workforce and both professional services and in terms of the jobs on the project itself being representative of the communities where we're doing the work. Did I get that right? I'm sorry, it was a little bit hard to hear you, Commissioner Gomez. Okay. So we are also targeting professional services type work. And we typically do that with requirements that we put into our contracts. Historically, we focused more on trades type work, but we have been expanding into professional services as well. And there are a few different programs that we use at CTA. We work with the federal WIOA and Section 3 projects or programs at the federal level. We also work with our own standard for economically disinvested areas, which is based on median income by zip code. And that's something that is, within our service area. So we are really focused on making sure that we're creating the demand for that by putting the requirements in our contracts, and then also creating the opportunities by doing outreach. So a big part of what we do then is focus on making sure that the outreach that we're doing are in the areas that are impacted, so that we're actually reaching out to people specifically in that area. We are working with our diversity department who's heading that for the CTA. And so they've been really actively involved with this for the Red Line extension specifically.
Thank you. No other questions, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gomez. Do other members of the commission have questions or comments? Kamal, can you confirm and let me know if there are other commissioners that have raised their hand?
No other hands raised, Chairwoman.
Great, thank you. Since this is a public hearing under the Illinois TIF Act, the limits of number of individuals allowed to speak shall not apply. I will now call upon members of the public who have used the raise your hand feature to be recognized by the chair. Each person called upon by the chair to speak will be limited to 3 minutes per agenda item. I will start with Michael Lafargue.
Good afternoon, Commissioner Butler and commissioners. Thank you, Leah Mooney and Ms. Rude and Ms. Trust and John Paul Jones for your detailed comments and explanations. One of my statements on behalf of the Red Line Extension Coalition was read, but I am also a member of the Chicago Association of Realtors Diversity 77 Committee. We represent the community of Roseland and Riverdale, and I share information about the community's wants and needs to CAR. We support this community's request for a transit TIF to support the Red Line Extension Coalition for all of the Red Line Extension project for all of the reasons proposed in previous comments. If I may, imagine, if you will, if it was Christmas and you had your list of gifts, which might have included a train, money, and building sets to build communities, and you saw gifts coming into your home and packages that looked exactly like you wanted. Looks like a train set. It looks like all the building blocks you need and all of the Monopoly money you need to do what you want as a child. And then that special day comes after dreaming of receiving these gifts. That special day comes and you open the door into the special room where a Christmas tree and table might be, and there's nothing. Ladies and gentlemen, since 1958, this has been on the table for this community. And we're very close to receiving it. Do not defer this dream. Do not segregate this community. Do not redline this community. Approve the transit TIF. Approve the transit TIF. It is the right thing to do. It's the equitable thing to do. And our official letter from the 77 Diversity Committee has been emailed to you. It was emailed late last night about 1 a.m. Please include that to your official files because the Chicago Association of Realtors is very much interested in all of Chicago, equitable development through all of Chicago. I do not speak for them, but I do speak for the community on behalf of this committee for the Chicago Association of Realtors. Thank you so much for this time. And again, the community asks for and expects your approval for the transit TIF for the Red Line Extension project. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next speaker I have here is Megan Hart.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to the commissioners, and thank you to those that made the presentations. That was very informative. I'm speaking in support of creating the Red Line TIF. I am the executive director of LISC Chicago. I'm also a board member of the Chicago Housing Authority, although I'm not speaking on behalf of the Chicago Housing Authority today. You know, it gets back to what Ms. Mooney said. This is about equitable access to transportation. For too long, the far south side has been cut off from this affordable rail access that is comparable to other parts of the city. In fact, CTA has invested in historically into Evanston and Oak Park and still left the far south side, our own communities, locked out of CTA transportation from a rail perspective. And the result of this is continuing that economic disinvestment. It's limited job, education, and investment opportunities in these far south communities. In LISC's work across the city, and especially in the far south, we hear that public transportation, affordable transportation, is an area of focus for all communities. But it's significant priority for our far south partners. And recently we did a quality of life plan in the far south, and this is one of their highest priorities in support of driving investment into their communities. And by creating access to the far south, all of Chicago benefits. There's access to jobs downtown, and there's access to opportunity downtown and other places in the city. The far south is an affordable place to live. It's one of the few naturally occurring affordable housing locations where people can buy and own homes. This will drive more investment in the south, but it will have more people coming from the north and spending money in other communities further south when they might not have in the past. And there's a great asset down there in Olive Harvey. And for all those that are concerned about what is their community getting by this transit TIF, they're getting access to one of the best city colleges in the city with programs that don't exist at other city colleges just by creating Red Line access. Home ownership is on the rise in the far south in lower income households, but it could be in middle income households. Community investment being made through Invest Southwest and other agencies could be benefited by these types of investments. It will spur investments in TOD, which will further spur investments in other places in the community. So why should we all invest in this extension? Because it is good for all of Chicago, and it's the perfect use of why TIF was created. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sean Walker. Sean, you have your hand raised. You may begin.
I appreciate the opportunity to, can you hear me? You hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I just had I had a concern that I think, I know we're talking about equity and using the TIF for a number of different reasons, but one of the things that I am concerned about with the CTA is their ability to deal with, one, it doesn't seem like the answer that they have the support of the aldermen. That's a concern to me. I know that she stated that Ms. Looney stated that they're continuing to working with it. So one, that's a concern, not saying that they won't get that at some point. The other part is that I'm hearing in between lines, if all owners or owners are not going to sell or has an issue with selling, that we're going to invoke the eminent domain. So that's another concern for residents, because then that puts us right back in what we're trying to eliminate, disadvantaged served communities. Another thing that I think is a little bit weak that I think they need to tighten up is when they're reaching out and saying that they're going to serve and provide job for Black and Brown. Been around for a long time, hear that all the time, but that in using section 3 for the justification to hiring or reaching out within the community, really need to understand what is their method of documenting their method of outreach, documenting who they're actually outreaching to, because there's a lot of times they say we outreach, but it's not inclusion of the Black and Brown that actually serve or live in those communities. So those are some of the things that I think needs to be really evaluated, really need to be tightened up, and need to be addressed if we are going to go with this particular recommendation for utilizing the TIF in this area as well, because there's a number of things that can be done. But just to reiterate, making sure that they got all the support, and that's something in writing too, that they're serving the disadvantaged, the Black and Brown in the community, and that they're actually hiring from the community and not just saying, hey, we couldn't find anyone, and reaching out to these general contractors or organizations that really doesn't have the relationships that for those Black and Brown that really need those jobs. And so I do want to just throw those things out for consideration, and making sure that those things are addressed, and really consider how you're going to move forward if necessary, if you're not able to get everyone to sell and not happen to use the eminent domain, because I think that's a disadvantage to the community as well. And that's all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Lou Turner.
My name is Lou Turner. I'm professor of urban and regional development at the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana. I've worked on the Red Line extension now for 20 years, and actually sitting here in my class. I teach a class on the Red Line extension. I want to talk in support of the CDC supporting and pushing the Red Line extension transit TIF. I'll just give you 2 data points and kind of make my remarks short. The amount of TIF funding that would be generated by the transit TIF between Madison and Pershing Road, I think it was a dollar amount of $950 million was mentioned. Consider that in relationship to how much consumer leakage leaves the greater Roseland area, that is the area of the Red Line extension, annually, which is $870 million. So that's every year. And so every year, because there are not businesses or business development in the area, business development that would be brought by the Red Line extension, $870 million leaves the community. Those dollars do not circulate. People have to go spend their money elsewhere. So we're just talking about $950 million generated once for the transit TIF in order to draw down the federal money. So this is what the cost of segregation looks like. That is not just disinvestment, but the fact that disinvestment leads to these very, very unequal outcomes for people where, again, nearly $1 billion leaves the community a year annually. And we're simply talking about nearly $1 billion for the transit TIF to be able to draw down the federal funding. The second point that I would make is the one that kind of to extend the notion that the TIF and the Red Line extension is good for the whole city. Actually, the Red Line extension is good for the whole county. The Red Line extension is a gateway project. A lot of people from the suburbs will be able to park their cars at 130th Street, get on an L, and go downtown. So this is for the larger Chicago metropolitan area, not just for the city of Chicago, but for the south suburbs as well, for people coming into the city. So it will benefit people beyond the greater Roseland area, the far south side, to the suburbs as well. And so the Red Line extension, again, is a gateway project between the city and the suburbs as well. So we'll benefit more than just the city. It will also benefit the larger Chicago metropolitan area.
Thank you. Chicago Federation of Labor.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak at today's Community Development Commission meeting. My name is Andrea Kluger, and I'm Deputy Chief of Staff at the Chicago Federation of Labor. The CFL represents 300 affiliate unions who in turn represent 500,000 working people in Chicago and Cook County. The CFL stands in solidarity with all workers fighting for their families across the city, which is why we strongly support securing the Red Line Extension Transit TIF, which is critical to ensuring this project becomes a reality. The TIF of $950 million will be used to fund a significant share of the local funding that is needed to leverage as much as $2 billion in federal funding. This TIF is critical to the Red Line extension becoming a reality, and the project cannot be built without it. I'm going to name a few reasons that the CFL supports this project. First, it will leverage the success of transit-served areas in downtown and near South Chicago to help transform far South Side neighborhoods, providing affordable rapid transit to historically underserved communities and improve mobility for transit-dependent residents and people with disabilities, ensuring the project provides equity. Next, it will provide connectivity and access to the entire city via the CTA network. Frequent rail service will reduce commute times and provide sustainable transportation that will help contribute to improved air quality, reduction of emissions, and energy savings. And finally, the employment opportunities. This project will increase connectivity within the CTA network, which opens up opportunities for workers to access job opportunities throughout the Chicago area and region. This extension would bring residents closer to jobs and other opportunities throughout the city. Less time spent traveling to work means families can spend more time for everything else. This investment will also create job opportunities for Chicagoans. It's anticipated that more than 30,000 total jobs will be created, with more than 6,000 for the Red Line Extension project alone. Construction on the Red Line Extension is set to begin in 2025, but we are already in conversations to discuss workforce opportunities, including establishing a pipeline for construction careers with family-sustaining wages. On behalf of the Chicago Federation of Labor, thank you again for the opportunity to speak, and we hope to see this item move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Near South Planning Board.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman and members of the commission. My name is Bonnie Sanchez Carlson, and I'm the President and Executive Director of the Near South Planning Board. Last Tuesday, Near South Planning Board, a non-for-profit community-based organization serving the businesses, institutions, and stakeholders on the Near South Side, was able to quickly review plans for the Red Line Extension project. We appreciate the opportunity to review such an important project and investment in transit for the city of Chicago. We totally agree that this extension is needed to better connect the south side of Chicago north to the central city district and beyond. And for that reason, we overwhelmingly support the extension and agree to support utilization of federal funding for the project. However, Near South Planning Board would like to note a concern regarding the large parcels of land, though shaded in gray within the proposed boundary, that would not be available for any other TIF for 35 years, short of a regulatory change, and feel it is necessary for the city to address this concern with the affected property owners. We expect the city to continue to work with our organization and other necessary community groups in its continued outreach to property owners and stakeholders as plans progress. We currently plan to co-host a community meeting to bring more attention to this project to the residents and businesses in the Near South Side. Having said that, Near South Planning Board has agreed to offer its support and approval of the redevelopment plan for the proposed Red Line Extension Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project and the designation of the area as a TIF redevelopment project area, and recommend adoption of tax increment financing for the area by the Community Development Commission. And for that, I thank you for allowing me this time to speak.
Thank you. All right, Kamal, do we have any other members of the public that have utilized the raise their hand function to speak?
No, Chairwoman, no other hand raised by the public.
Okay, great. If I can have the full screen, I know that Alderman Dow has joined us. And so Alderman Dow, if you would like to make comments, I see your hand is raised, please do so. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the Community Development Commission. I just wanted to check back in with you since your last meeting to basically say that for me, the jury is still out on this red line extension TIF. But I appreciate the beginning conversations I've had with the Chicago Transit Authority about locations within the area benefiting, or what I should say, generating those TIF dollars. Let me turn on my video. So we have started those conversations, and I want to thank Bill Mooney and Ashley Walker and the members of the Chicago Transit Authority staff that are working with me. I look forward to the continued collaboration because I think for this project to benefit all areas of the region and areas within the city of Chicago, that we have to be able to not only invest in the red line extension, but also invest in the existing stations that we have that will increase ridership and the community's experience when interacting with these stations or when using these stations. So I continue to be hopeful and look forward to more conversations as this moves towards City Council approval. Chairman, thank you so much for squeezing me in, and now I have to get back to the Budget Committee.
Thank you, Alderman Dow, for joining us. And you know, we're grateful for your participation always.
Thank you.
Kamal, are there any other aldermen who've joined us that have? I don't see any, but I want to.
I don't see any, Chairwoman.
Okay, great. If there are no further questions or comments, we will now adjourn the public hearing and reopen the regular CDC meeting so that we may call the item to a vote. The resolution before us recommends approval of the redevelopment plan for the proposed red line extension RLE TIF redevelopment project area and the adoption of tax increment financing for the area. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Curtis.
Thank you, Commissioner Curtis. Do I have a second?
Second by Trevino.
Thank you, Commissioner Trevino. I will now call the roll. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act, all votes are to be conducted by roll call so that each member's vote on each issue can be identified and recorded. Please signify your vote on approval of the motion by saying yes, no, or abstain. Vice Chair Newsom.
Yes.
Secretary Wheat.
Yes.
Commissioner Buford.
Yes.
Commissioner Cepeda. Commissioner Chan McKibben.
No.
Commissioner Cox.
Yes.
Commissioner Curtis.
Yes.
Commissioner Davis.
Yes.
Commissioner Gomez.
Yes.
Commissioner Griggs. Commissioner Thomas.
Yes.
Commissioner Trevino.
Yes.
And Chairwoman Butler votes yes. The motion passes. For our first item of new business, listed as item A under the new business section of our agenda, the Department of Housing is requesting authority to negotiate a redevelopment agreement with 548 Development LLC and its related or affiliated entities for redevelopment of the property located at 3831 and 3853 West Chicago Avenue and 739 through 741 North Springfield Avenue in the Chicago Central Park Tax Increment Financing redevelopment project area, and to recommend to the City Council of the City of Chicago the designation of 548 Development LLC and its related entities or affiliates as developer. Tamara Collins and Ernest Bellamy will provide the staff report on behalf of the Department of Housing and the Department of Planning and Development.
Thank you. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Thank you. Sorry, let me just. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Tamara Collins with the Department of Housing. With me today is Ernest Bellamy, Project Manager for the Department of Planning and Development, and from the development team, AJ Patton and Andrew Gear. The proposal before you requests authority to enter into a negotiated sale for city-owned land, to negotiate a TIF redevelopment agreement, and to designate as developer 548 Development LLC, its related entities and affiliates. The developer for this proposal is an emerging African-American developer. Mr. Patton is the owner of 548 Development LLC for this proposal, and this proposal was selected as part of IDA's 2022 tax credit funding round. The development will be located in 37th Ward's Humboldt Park community area, where Emma Mitz is the alderwoman, and within the boundaries of the Chicago Central Park TIF District. The proposal is located in the Humboldt Park Invest Southwest corridor. And while the site is not part of the Invest Southwest RFP selection process, it is a very important site and development proposal to the Invest Southwest corridor and surrounding community area. As part of the visioning process for the development of the Invest Southwest RFP for Chicago Avenue, this site was considered for future development. The site has since been regarded as a very important development site for the corridor. The site itself borders Chicago Avenue on the north, North Springfield Avenue on the west, and North Avers Avenue on the east. The site is surrounded by both residential and commercial uses. The city will convey four city-owned parcels highlighted in red. And the site out highlighted in blue is developer-owned that has already been acquired by Mr. Patton. Additionally, the developer has acquired one site from Chicago, from the Cook County Land Bank, which completes the site assemblage for the development. All city-owned parcels will be conveyed at closing. The site is currently zoned as C1-1 and will be rezoned as a B3-2 and established as a planned development at the next Chicago Plan Commission meeting scheduled for October 20th. The project consists of the new construction of a 60-unit multifamily residential building with ground floor retail space, community spaces, as well as parking in the rear of the building. The third and fourth floors provide outdoor amenity space for residents. The building will include a green roof, solar panels, and will meet the city's sustainable development policies with at least 100 points. The first floor will contain a grocery store with a coffee shop, community space, residential lobby areas, and office space. Floors 2 through 4 will contain 60 residential units, which includes a mix of studios, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. 42 units, or 80% of the units, will be for tenants with incomes at or below 60% of AMI, and the remaining 12 units will be market rate for a total of 60 units. The proposed project has a total development cost of $40.7 million, for which the developer is requesting up to $18.7 million in TIF financing. The TIF is approximately 46% of the total development costs. While the percentage of TIF is a little higher than we see on some historical affordable housing proposals, it is important to note that both departments are seeing cost escalations due to material shortages, labor increases, construction interest increases, and longer construction timelines across the board on all development proposals. In addition to the TIF, other financing includes a private mortgage of up to $4 million, a required 25% deferred developer fee of $625,000, which will be paid out of cash flow. A deferred developer fee is required by IDA's low housing tax credit policies. There's a $385,000 ComEd energy grant, And then IDA provided $1.5 million in low-income housing tax credits, which is generating about $13.6 million in equity. In addition, there's a $4.7 million ARO donation and a $2.3 million donation tax credit donation, which is derived from the ARO donation, and that's generating approximately $1.9 million in equity for the benefit of the project. DOH, in partnership with DPD, has reviewed the proposal and requested the commission approve the developer, that the developer 548 Development LLC be designated as developer for the project to be located at 3831 West Chicago Avenue. That DOH be authorized to negotiate and execute and deliver a redevelopment agreement with the developer for the project. And since no alternative proposals were received by DOH or DPD within the 30-day publication notice, that we be allowed to approve the negotiated sale of 3831 West Chicago Avenue, 3853 West Chicago Avenue, 741 North Springfield, and 739 North Springfield to 548 Development LLC and its related entities and affiliates. This concludes my presentation, and DOH and DPD and the developer are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Kamal, can you tell me, can you give me the full screen, please? And also let me know if Alderman Mitz is on this call.
I'm checking for the alderman. I don't see her, Jim.
Okay, great. Thank you for checking. Commissioners, I'd like to turn the floor over to you for any questions you may have regarding this proposed transaction. If you have questions, please utilize the raise your hand function. Kamal, I don't see any raised hands from members of the commission. Can you confirm that is the case?
No hands raised.
Great. Thank you for your confirmation. Since there are no questions or comments from members of the commission, I will now call the item for a vote. The resolution before us requests authority for the Department of Housing and Department of Planning and Development to negotiate a redevelopment agreement with 548 Development LLC and its related or affiliated entities for redevelopment of the property located at 3831 and 3853 West Chicago Avenue and 739 and 741 North Springfield Avenue in the Chicago Central Park Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project area, and to recommend to the City Council of the City of Chicago the designation of 548 Development LLC and its related entities or affiliates as developer. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Thomas.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Do I have a second?
Second, Grace Chan McKibben.
Thank you, Commissioner Chan McKibben. I will now call the vote. Please signify your vote on approval of the motion by saying yes, no, or abstain. Vice Chair Newsome.
Yes.
Secretary Wheat.
Yes.
Commissioner Buford.
Yes.
Commissioner Cepeda. Commissioner Chan McKibben.
Yes.
Commissioner Cox.
Yes.
Commissioner Curtis. Is Commissioner Curtis still with us? Commissioner Davis.
Yes.
Commissioner Gomez.
Yes.
Commissioner Griggs. Commissioner Thomas.
Yes.
Commissioner Trevino.
Yes.
And Chairwoman Butler votes yes, the motion passes. Commissioners, for our second item of new business, Department of Planning and Development, you're welcome, is requesting authority to negotiate a redevelopment agreement with West Side Health Authority and its related or affiliated entities for redevelopment of the property located at 5500 West Madison Street in the Madison-Austin Corridor Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project area, and to recommend to the City of Chicago, to the Chicago City Council, the designation of West Side Health Authority or its related entities as developer. Michael Perrella will provide his staff report on behalf of the Department of Planning.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Michael Perrella. I'm project manager with the Department of Planning and Development's Financial Incentives Division. And as stated, DPD is here to recommend designation of the Westside Health Authority and its related entities or affiliates as a developer, and recommend that we negotiate a redevelopment agreement with them in order to develop redevelop, I should say, the Emmett School, or the former Emmett School, into a workforce training, career development, and entrepreneurial skills center. The project is located at 5500 West Madison Street at the northeast corner of Madison and Laramie in the West Planning Region, Austin Community Area, 29th Ward, and Madison-Austin TIF. Here are some neighborhood context slides. You see the site here again at that northeast corner of Laramie. This is the former Emmett School. This was one of the schools closed in the mass school closings in 2013. It's sat vacant ever since. The developer has purchased this property from CPS, I think in 2019, and have been actively trying to redevelop the site since then. And here's a view from Madison Street of the current condition of the building. So as stated, Westside Health Authority is the developer. They've been serving and they're doing a partnership with Austin Coming Together in order to redevelop this property. Westside Health has been serving the West Side since 1988, and are a large organization providing services to the West Side, as is Austin Coming Together, which is an organization that supports and connects over 50 nonprofits, faith-based organizations, and public and private entities across the West Side. So the existing building will be redeveloped with a 3-story addition facing Central Avenue. It'll be approximately 76,500 square feet when complete. The first and second floors will be intended for the tenants, Westside Health Authority, Austin Coming Together, and a few more, which I'll list in a minute. And the third floor will be built out for a future spec tenant. It'll contain the Workforce Training Center, Career Development Center, Manufacturing Training Center. There'll also be commercial space for a financial services tenant, community plaza, and parking lot. So on site, the Westside Health Authority is going to do job readiness and training programs, case management services, and vocational training. These services are targeted towards individuals, youth, and citizens of the West Side and Chicago more broadly. Austin Coming Together will operate a financial coaching and employment services training on site. And they're also tenanted with the Jane Addams Resource Corp, which is will provide free on-site manufacturing skills training and training in welding and mechanical assembly. So overall, we have a very, very beneficial project in terms of workforce development happening on the West Side of the vacant school. In order to achieve this project, they've had to tap a diverse amount of sources, including our TIF funds, which we are requesting $7.25 million in order to do so. Their equity contributions of $6.12 million come from a variety of sources, including Austin stakeholders through a community fundraising drive, Westside Health's property arm, the United Way of Metro Chicago is providing $5 million as well, and as the Pritzker Traube Chicago Prize Foundation, another $500,000, and philanthropic support from such organizations as Blue Cross Blue Shield and the Joyce Foundation. Another large source is a $10 million DCEO grant, or Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. This is an Illinois state grant that they received. In addition, they'll need new market tax credits and funding in order to complete the project, which they are seeking as soon as they secure, which is ongoing request that they're seeking, and to which the TIF amount will contribute to obtaining that source. But as you see, it's approximately $28 million project. And when it's all said and done, I'll just show you a few renderings of the project as it stands now. Here's a site plan showing the addition in the building and the parking lot itself. There'll be a plaza at the corner of Central Park and Madison Street. And it's also a future development site. Here's elevations of the project. And here are the renderings, as you see, of the project itself. That corner lot, it's a future retail opportunity. It'll be a phase 2 project that's not subject to this TIF and developer designation request. However, they are planning work on that site currently in the form of what is called a pop fit or a pop-up court, which is they're going to activate that corner, so it will not remain vacant. And it will feature, it's funded separately from this project through a separate city initiative. And it'll feature a turf field, workout area, and yoga studio, or outdoor yoga area, as you can see in some of these renderings. But essentially, they've left no corner of this property undeveloped, and there'll be a major boon to the community. There's numerous benefits to this project, including training, or we can train permanent jobs, 50 permanent jobs, 65 temporary construction jobs, and they're aspired to train over 2,000 workers a year. And obviously, to redevelop this vacant school, this long vacant property, it conforms with the TIF plan because it facilitate the rehabilitation of architecturally significant buildings, encourage development of commercial and other properties on Madison Street, decrease the number of underutilized parcels, and provide opportunities for women-owned and minority-owned businesses to thrive, and support job training, which are all goals of the TIF as established. So the DPD wholeheartedly recommends designating Westside Health Authority as the developer, and recommends that CDC authorize DPD to negotiate and execute a redevelopment agreement so we can see this project through. With that, I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Michael, do you know if Alderman Talafaro or anyone from his office is joining us? And can you speak to the Alderman's level of support for this project?
I don't think he's attending today, no.
And to my second question?
Oh, yeah, but yes, he does support the project. Yes.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, Kamal, if I can have the full screen so I can see the commissioners. Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions? Commissioner Cox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to frame this because I'm so excited to see this project move forward. It was one of the first projects that I visited in terms of being advanced by a community development corporation that simply did not have a path to getting something this scale and complexity financed. So to see it come in full fruition, supported through the Chicago Recovery Plan and many other sources, it's very, very exciting to see, as well as seeing them benefit from the mayor's POP courts, the Public Open Plaza initiative, so that they can activate the 100% corner of that site even before construction begins. So this is an example, quite frankly, of what we hope would happen with formerly closed schools. And even if a project has complex financing, there's a way to activate it, in the interim. So this is for me an exemplar of what it's like to see a community development project advanced by a community CDC reach this point. So I'm very pleased, and I thought it was worth highlighting just how exemplary this particular one is. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cox. Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just have a clarification because it was hard to hear Mike, and that is whether the alderman has a letter of support or some type of support for this on file, because I didn't see it in
No, there was no letter of support on file, but through our conversations with the alderman, we have his support.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Any additional questions or comments, Commissioner Thomas?
No, I do like when the packet actually gives us information about the aldermanic support. So in the future, I'd like to see that.
Okay, well, we have key leadership from the department on with us today, and I'm sure that's been noted. Thank you. Your request has been noted. Any other questions from or comments from members of the commission? I will now call the item for a vote. The resolution before us requests authority for the Department of Planning and Development to negotiate a redevelopment agreement with West Side Health Authority and its related or affiliated entities for redevelopment of the property located at 5500 West Madison Street in the Madison-Austin Corridor Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project Area, and to recommend to the Chicago City Council the designation of West Side Health Authority or its related entities as developer. Do I have a motion?
So move, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Newsom. Do I have a second?
Seconded by Commissioner Cox.
Thank you, Commissioner Cox. I will now call the vote. Please signify your vote on approval of the motion by saying yes, no, or abstain. Vice Chair Newsom.
Yes.
Secretary Wheat.
Yes.
Commissioner Buford.
Yes.
Commissioner Cepeda. Commissioner Chan McKibben.
Yes.
Commissioner Cox.
Yes.
Commissioner Curtis. Commissioner Davis. Commissioner Davis.
Yes, sorry, I was on mute. Yes.
Commissioner Gomez.
Yes.
Commissioner Griggs. Commissioner Thomas.
Yes.
Commissioner Trevino.
Yes.
And Chairwoman Butler votes yes. The motion passes. For our commissioners, for our final item of new business, the Department of Planning and Development is requesting authority to negotiate a redevelopment agreement with Batter and Berries, the Bruce, One and Only LLC, and its related or affiliated entities for redevelopment of the property located at 5924 West Chicago Avenue in the Austin Commercial Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project Area, and to recommend to the City Council the designation of Batter and Berries, the Bruce, One and Only LLC or its related entities as developer, and to advertise the Department of Planning and Development's intention to enter into a negotiated sale with One and Only LLC for the disposition of property located at 5926 West Chicago Avenue in the Austin Commercial Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project Area, to request alternative proposals and to approve the sale of the property to One and Only LLC if no responsive alternative proposals are received. Robert Bumpers will provide his staff report on behalf of the department.
Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, Chairwoman, committee, and guests. For the record, my name is Robert Bumpers, Financial Planning Analyst for the Department of Planning and Development. I'm here today to request the approval of One and Only LLC as the developer for the Batter and Berries project at 5924 and 5926 West Chicago Avenue, and to enter in a negotiated sale with One and Only LLC for the disposition of the property located at 5926 West Chicago Avenue. The project is located at 5924 and 5926 West Chicago Avenue in the Austin community area in the 29th Ward. Alderman Talaferro supports the project, but is not on the call today. The project is in the Austin commercial TIF. These slides show the neighborhood context, project site, and current condition of the subject properties. Property to the left, as you're looking at the screen, is the vacant Chicago city-owned parcel. There are 3 parcels here. Only the one that is directly next door to 5924 West Chicago is going to be sold to the developer. The project is a collaboration between Juan Teague of One and Only LLC and Batter and Berries owners, Dr. Tanya Richardson and Craig Richardson, which aims to bring a restaurant and event space to the Austin community utilizing a vacant building and city-owned parcel. The new Batter and Berries location will give Austin residents a new sit-down breakfast brunch experience in the Soul City corridor. The Bruce, which is the event space, will be Austin's first full-service catering, community event, and arts programming space, creating jobs and providing career pathway opportunities. The event space will serve as a prestigious meeting location for artists, educators, business owners, social entrepreneurs, community members, and stakeholders. The scope of work for the building includes a full interior and exterior rehab, including a new roof and building systems, with an outdoor dining area on the vacant parcel. The total investment of the project is $3.3 million, including $1.9 million in TIF from the Austin Commercial TIF District. Slide 8 provides an exterior rendering of the completed project. One and Only is an event production company with over 12 years of experience in the entertainment and business industry, providing over 1,000 jobs in local communities and training numerous small businesses in Chicago. Batter and Berries is one of Chicago's top breakfast restaurants. As a staple in the Lincoln Park community, Batter and Berries creates selections from scratch and consistently brings in large crowds to enjoy a high-quality restaurant experience. The $3.3 million project will be funded by a combination of equity, debt, TIF, and a WeRise grant. $1.9 million in TIF represents 58.5% of the project sources. Again, TIF assistance, roughly $1.9 million, 58.5% of project funding. These are city protections that will be in the RDA. The department supports this project as its benefits include redevelopment of a vacant building and city-owned parcel, bring a new restaurant and event space to Austin. The project will also serve as a catalyst for future development along Chicago Avenue. And in addition, the project will add a vacant city-owned property to the tax roll and offer new employment opportunities. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions along with the developer, Juan Teague, who is in attendance.
Thank you. And you indicated, Robert, that the alderman is not available to join us. If I could just ask Kamal just to confirm that the alderman or his office is not on.
Sorry, I don't see the alderman here.
Okay, great. And then Kamal, if I could have the full screen of commissioners. So commissioners, this is your opportunity to ask questions or offer comments on what the department has proposed. Are there questions or comments?
This is Commissioner Davis. I will offer a comment. I'll abstain from the vote as I am very familiar with One and Only events and Ms. Teague. She provides excellent service to our communities, gives great events, and has a real eye toward making sure that both youth and minority entrepreneurs in the community have a space in which to show their arts in order to have their events, and brings a lot of important expertise to all of the projects that she's involved in. And so I'm very glad to see this project moving forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Are there any additional questions or comments from members of the commission? Seeing none, I will call the item for a vote. The resolution.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Are we going to hear from?
And then we know that the
Mr. Teague.
invitations.
If the developer would like to speak, that's not necessary.
Okay, no, I was looking forward to it because I haven't had the pleasure of meeting him, but I did want, I'm a big fan of Batters and Berries, and I thought maybe this was going to be the occasion. So it would be, I would welcome it if they care to offer a few remarks.
Well, I think Ms. Teague would.
I'm sorry.
Like to.
That's.
I'm a girl.
That one. I'm sure you get that. I'm sorry.
No, that's why the name of my company is One and Only. I'm the only girl you'll probably ever meet with that name.
So, thank you for that moment of levity, Commissioner Cox, and to Ms. Juan Teague, if you would care to make comments, we'd love to hear them.
Yeah, I'll be very brief. I always tell people, like, I'm a West Sider
and who happens to now live south. But I was raised and born in Austin, and you know, after my father passed in 2016, I really wanted to, like, he was a huge person in our community, and when he passed, it really had me thinking, like, I'm doing all these events and all these productions downtown Chicago and things like that, and how can I make an imprint with bringing some of the assets that I have and resources and relationships that I have to help build the West and the South Sides, primarily the West, because it's such in dire need. And I initially started the idea with doing an event space, but then changed it once I was looking at the event space and couldn't get a coffee. And then I just gave a call to Batter and Berries, and we've worked out, and I've had some up and downs with this project, bought this property in 2019. And so to see it coming to fruition, because to know me, Chef Ken, who's there, as well as the Richardsons, we not only want to make this a part of something, a restaurant event space opening, but honestly showing career paths, because just like with me, I tell everyone, I went to University of Iowa, however, didn't graduate, but to see that there's an industry that kids can actually, and adults can make career paths, not just a job, but our goal, we have a 10-week training program, because if we can't take them, then I have Live Nation. We're working with so many different organizations that we can place some of our kids in the neighborhood. So I'm really excited. Y'all gonna all have to come. Y'all can probably have this committee meeting, you know, over there in the building. But honestly, thank you guys. I'm so excited. I think this is going to be great. You have me coming on the West Side, then my soul sister Soleil in North Lawndale. So my goal is to bring more people like her, Corey Gecki, Bridget, all of us to the West Side. So instead of giving to other neighborhoods, we're going to put it in our own neighborhoods.
So, so Madam Chairman, thank you. That's exactly what I needed to hear. I'm just so excited about your arrival on Chicago Avenue and the Soul City corridor. It is a turning point for that corridor, because they've been looking for a really high quality sit down space and restaurant, and this is going to be it. And quickly behind you will be the Ave Cafe a little further down, and then the Blues Museum a little further down from that. And I think we're starting to see Soul City emerge as a corridor that I think so many people have imagined. But you are the first in, and I'm so thrilled to be able to support the work. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, and also be looking out on Showtime. Lorenz Tate, who's from Austin neighborhood, is going to be filming. It's 5 of us: Liz with 40 Acres, Marcel Jackson. He's going to basically, I have him basically doing he got picked up to do a docuseries on Chicago. So now he's going to focus total episodes on Chicago Avenue and what we're doing. So a lot of the before, and then it'll come back once we're open, 40 Acres, and follow that so that it can be a part of that docuseries that will be on Showtime. We film on Saturday, just so everybody knows.
That's so good.
Oh, that's terrific.
Fantastic.
That's fantastic. Any other questions or comments?
Chairwoman, I just wanted to thank the committee, and I also wanted to thank Juan for being here today, but also her participation in really helping build an area of Chicago that really needs help, and it's so appreciated by this department, her effort and desire to make something really great happen.
Terrific. Thank you. And if there are no other questions or comments, I will now call the item to a vote. The resolution before us requests authority for the Department of Planning to negotiate a redevelopment agreement with Batter and Berries, the Bruce, One and Only LLC, and its related or affiliated entity for redevelopment of the property located at 5924 West Chicago Avenue in the Austin Commercial Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project Area, to recommend to the Chicago City Council the designation of Batter and Berries, the Bruce, One and Only LLC, or its related entities as developer, and to advertise the Department of Planning and Development's intention to enter into a negotiated sale with One and Only LLC for the disposition of property located at 5926 West Chicago Avenue in the Austin Commercial Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project Area, to request alternative proposals and to approve the sale of the property to One and Only LLC if no responsive alternative proposals are received. Do I have a motion?
So move, Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Do I have a second?
Second, Commissioner Newsom.
Thank you, Commissioner Newsom. I will now call the vote. Please signify your vote on approval of the motion by saying yes, no, or abstain. Vice Chair Newsom,
Yes.
Secretary Wheat,
Yes.
Commissioner Buford,
Yes.
Commissioner Cepeda, Commissioner Chan McKibben,
Yes.
Commissioner Cox,
Yes.
Commissioner Curtis, Commissioner Davis,
I enthusiastically abstain.
Commissioner Gomez, Commissioner Griggs, Commissioner Thomas.
I must say, Chairman, that with what happened in that area after Dr. King's visit to Chicago back in the 60s, I have to say yes to this.
Yes.
Thank you. And Commissioner Trevino
Yes.
and Chairwoman Butler enthusiastically votes yes because I love the food. The motion passes.
Congratulations.
What a way to end the meetings. This was
Yes.
Here.
Well, you know what? So joyful. And I just have to thank members of the commission. This was a very long, but very important gathering today for us. And so I just can't thank members of the commission enough for your time, not just for this meeting, but you know, the time that you took to prepare for you know, this session and your dedication to showing up every month and doing the work of this commission. So know that it's appreciated by the city, and I personally appreciate your participation. Vice Chair Newsom has raised her hand, and so I'm gonna let the person who keeps me straight have the last word.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. What I'd like to do is request that the record indicate that I arrived late to the meeting and that I do approve the minutes of the September 13 CDC meeting. And lastly, I'd like to inform Ms. Teague that we need a better and better berries in Bronzeville.
I agree. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
We're working on it. We're working on it.
Okay.
I love it. That south side, west side rivalry.
Yes.
That's right. That's right. I also saw a shout out for the University of Iowa, but we won't go there.
Yes,
All right.
my brother's the mayor. My brother's the mayor there. Yes.
Yes.
Can we,
Go on, guys.
can we have a motion to adjourn today's commission meeting?
So moved by
So
Cox.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and enjoy what's left of your day. And thanks again.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.